Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 321. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Boy, we talked about a lot more than we expected. So says the sensei of the Whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
Yeah, in this episode, we originally intended on this to be a Before Watchmen wrap-up for a while because we're going to be 0 issues next week. We were going to talk about, which we did, Before Watchmen Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, and had a casual chat about the Crimson Corsair. What happened was, though, the geeky fans that we are, we wanted to talk a little Batgirl, because we haven't talked about this book in a while. We're both Gail Simone junkies, and we really want to talk about this book because we have this crossover that just came up with Batwoman, and it was awesome. So we want to talk about that. Then we also, how could we not talk about what just came out in Justice League number 12? So this turned into a much bigger episode than you and I had expected.
yeah, but, hey, Batgirl's always relevant.
We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com. Remember, this month they're doing 50% off all new DC trades and hardcovers, which is just an amazing deal to get those at 50% off. I also want to let everyone know that, once again, they are a Comixology digital partner. Every time you make a digital purchase over at DCBService.com, you earn 5% of that purchase in credit. You can then use that credit towards any purchase at DCBService.com. So make sure to do all of your digital purchasing over there. It doesn't cost you any more to do that, but you're also earning that additional credit, which is really cool. It's a great way to make some money off of the fact that you're buying digitally anyway. Over at InStockTrades.com, it's month 9 of this end-of-the-world sale that they've been doing. And this one's all DC. It's 45% off all DC Comics. That means trades and hardcovers over there. Plus, they have a massive selection of these DC hardcovers and trades at 65% off. So head on over to InStockTrades.com to see the savings you're going to be getting on the collected editions. Besides that 45 to 65% off savings, remember that orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. So definitely check that out over at InStockTrades.com. And I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Oh, Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Jim is once again proving that brevity is our buzzword. Let's talk some comics.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Jim, we're jumping back into Before Watchmen with a happy, friendly piece we like to call Before Watchmen Rorschach number 1. Brian Azzarello is the writer, Lee Bermeo on art, Barbara Ciardo, colorist, Rob Lay letterer, Lee Bermeo cover artist, Jim Steranko, Jim Lee, with Scott Williams and Alex Sinclair on the variant covers. Camelia Zhang is the assistant editor. Mark Doyle, associate editor. Will Dennis is the editor. Watchmen created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. Apologies for any name butchery because, this was my guy. When Watchmen came out, I'm not alone here. As a Batman fan, you get the Rorschach. He's that damaged character who's driven, and he's a normal human. He's got the funky mask. He's got the attitude and the one-liners, and you just know I'm never gonna be Rorschach. But boy, wouldn't it be great for one day to have people intimidated by me the way that they're intimidated by Rorschach? I don't know if I'd want the smell that goes along with it, though. Am I right? This guy's he's not the cleanliest of fellows.
I don't know. I'm betting he's, I think he's probably a brute kind of guy. I can see him put a little Old Spice on and, maybe a whistling dove. As he's sprinkling a little bit of Irish French fresh scentedness.
The funny part is when you were whistling. Wait. Here's the sad part. When you were whistling that, I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't a mask go into his mouth? You know what? I've always loved taking the joking out of it, I've always loved this character. And I think my appreciation of him when I was younger was more that he was in that Batman style of vigilante, Daredevil, more of the intimidating vigilante, the dark edge, that type of thing, who got ground and gritty down to the street level. And I always liked those street level characters. As I've gotten older, I've gotten more interested in the psychological thing behind Rorschach. What his childhood did to him, what his society's done to him, and how he's this damaged guy who in many ways, I guess, is against his perception of social injustice. It's funny how I've loved the Night Owl series because you really got to see how you had these two vigilantes who have different political ideologies and different ways of handling the world in general. And I really love how I see Rorschach in a very different light due to his interactions with Night Owl. And these series are really great companions to each other. They aren't interconnected in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that I do think you learn more about Rorschach due to his interactions with Night Owl in that book. And it does lead to judgments and thoughts about him in this series. I don't know if you're having that experience. I got to imagine you are, because I know how much you're loving the Night Owl series.
Oh, definitely. This is Rorschach. I always saw him just as, a little touched in the head, a little bit of intense, but I didn't really see how far damaged he was. He had a, tough childhood. Okay, he had a troubled childhood, but it never really sunk in how messed up he was. So, I kind of saw him as, just how I kind of see Batman a little bit. I saw him a little bit darker version of Batman. Yeah, he had some tough stuff that he was growing up with, but he turned that, and channeled his anger. And these past couple, the Night Owl stuff and now this issue, you really see this guy is beyond slightly touched. He's full on crazy. There is just a level of insanity in him. This isn't just a determined person who's, fighting the bad guys. This is somebody who, I don't know if he's doing it more I don't want to say he's doing it so for the masochistic, for his own, so because he enjoys the pain, but there is a level of that he wants himself to suffer as well. And it's that, especially some of the childhood stories, some of the, the insight in the when you start hearing his journal and just the way he refers to himself, the way he looks at himself, and the way he completely looks at just society, and especially the various females he'll encounter. It's kind of a really wow, this dude is beyond touched. He's full on out there.
And it's not so much in the first issue of this, but in general with Rorschach. One of the things that I've always noticed with him, and I think it's more and more I'm noticing it as we've seen explorations of him, and it does include in this actually, because it's a lot of what you're touching on here. His distinction between innocent and guilty, or weak and strong, are a lot more harsh than most of your quote-unquote heroes. Because I really think he's a true vigilante in the way that he operates. I mean, he's more of that end. He's skewed a lot further along than Batman is, for example, just to use that kind of archetype comparison. Because he will literally, you mentioned with women, if there's a woman who is dressed provocatively and she's a victim of a crime, he's not the guy, he's not the comforting guy. He's the guy that will, on some level, blame her for her dress, for what happens to her, which you can get into the whole debate on how wrong that really is, because it's not an advertisement. It's not saying, hey, attack me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because you're going out for a night of fun or whatever. But he's that kind of guy that will do that. He'll also judge males based on whether they will stand up to certain things or not, how they react to the world or not. When he's in that Rorschach mask, it's really his whole life of, he makes the statement here that, what made you into this? It's, why do you always have to ruin anything? Mom was saying that to him when he was a kid. And he comes back and he said, I looked into her eyes and said, you did. You did and do. But then he expands that out in his reflection. All of you do. And he talks about walking down the streets, avoiding contact, eye contact, heads down. He's looking at all of these people and finding everything wrong with them. Now, granted, where he's at is obviously one of the seedier areas around. So you can see how probably a lot of truth in that, but he really does become judgmental pretty fast of people. And his methods of interrogation, whoa. Rorschach, it's funny, as a kid, if you'd asked me when I was in high school if I wanted to be Rorschach, I would have said, yeah, Rorschach is cool. This Rorschach now, I'm like, no, that is not, if I was a superhero, that is not the type of superhero I would want to be. I think, my understanding now of I would want a welcoming reputation. I would want people to look at me as like a hero. I would definitely not cross certain lines because I would be very well aware of a lot of what Night Owl says, the original Night Owl says to the newer Night Owl, that, this is like a brand. This is like a, I don't mean that in a Booster Gold level either. What I mean is, you want the public to have a certain perception of you because you're trying to be a symbol. Rorschach's not worried about being a symbol.
Yeah, that's where I always wonder and question, what is Rorschach's motivation? He's not after fame and glory, so we know it's not that. Is he after the justice? Is he after the punishment? Is he after the pain? Is he after all of the above? And that's, because I never saw him in that light before. I always saw him as the vigilante. I saw him as the hard-edged vigilante who's fighting for justice. Now I question that, just because we're getting a deeper look into his mind.
He's cleaning the filth. I really think that's his motivation, because you got to be careful in some of the way, and I don't think you mean it this way in how you're saying it, but a lot of your comparisons make him sound a lot more like Hooded Justice than I think he is. I don't see him in that category, because I think Hooded Justice is into the pain. I don't see Rorschach being into the pain. I think he likes causing the pain to send a message, to get rid of the filth, to intimidate the filth, to clean up the filth. He's lived his whole life surrounded by filth, being able to do nothing about it. He's been victimized in his eyes by filth. You made me into this. You made me hate and resent this filth that you're involved in because of the way I was brought up. I was surrounded by my mother and people like you because of that. And he's all about cleaning up the filth. Your commentary that this man is off his rocker is 110%, I think, accurate. But I think the reason why is he's been so driven to this by being pushed this way in his mind. And that's his justification for it. Yeah, I do think at times we see a glimmer of the boy that was in there. I do think there's moments when he's with Night Owl. The boy is, but this, I've never seen such a thick set of frosting on a cake before as you've got with this guy. You need like a buzzsaw to cut through the frosting to get to any form of cake that used to be the little boy that we saw in various flashbacks with Rorschach. And I think that's what Night Owl gets to eventually, when we do see him in those moments where the two of them like had an argument in Night Owl. I think that kid's in there, but you're rarely going to see him. And when Rorschach catches he's letting him out, he puts him right back in there very fast.
Exactly. And when I'm talking about the wanting the pain, it's definitely not a Hooded Justice thing. Mm-hmm. It's more of a subconscious punishing myself, because he is a child who was abused his entire life. There's a lot of times that you deal with abuse victims. You deal with, especially when they're children who are abused. And there's no other way to describe how he was treated but just pure 100% child abuse. Just the environment, just everything that he dealt with. And there is that level of self-punishment. There is that level of, just self-hatred that children like this will deal with, and I kind of see that now in Rorschach.
I don't get the self-punishment from it. I get it that he wants to dish out punishment because of the punishment he received in the past. I agree with you that was an element, but that's more of the kid who was neglected, the kid who was victimized, the kid who was exposed to things that like adults shouldn't see. And I think this is a guy who right now is out to like harshly punish the world that is, or anybody who's involved in that world, I should say. Not everybody in the world, but he's out to really destroy and take out anybody. I think it's why there are times where he'll sit there, even when Veidt was doing, his crazy thing, there was probably parts of Rorschach that there were certain things that Veidt was doing that Rorschach might have agreed with. Yeah. Because of that kind of mentality. I don't see him punishing himself. I guess, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I guess I'm very interested and intrigued. Where do you see him kind of punishing himself? Because I see a driven man, and I guess if you're going on the driven aspect of it, then I agree with you, because he does really drive himself into this world. But I don't see him like into getting beat up. I don't see him into. Yeah. And so I guess I'm more asking for clarification versus disputing you, because I'm not quite seeing what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not on the upfront direct level. It's not. It's a subconscious. That. It's not him saying, "Oh yeah, this is great. I just got my butt kicked." It's more of the subconscious level of him, of his psyche.
Because I guess I see resentment of when he looks at people, he resents them, but I don't see him resenting himself. Like, you never see that inner psychological dialogue where, he's talking what a horrible. If anything, I don't sense any self-loathing, but I also don't sense any love for himself. Like, I've never seen anybody who, like, is... I almost would argue that he's ambivalent towards himself. He's more focused on his anger towards the world. Like, if you asked him... And I think it's one of the things in Watchmen, it's really well played out. When there's that there's a psychologist who's talking to Kovacs, Rorschach, when he's out of his mask. I don't know that Rorschach could ever really put a handle on who and what he really is and what his sense of self really is, other than that the mask, I think, has given him this identity of, I go back to just destroying and taking out the filth. Like this guy who's in the sewer, running through the sewer right now, taking out, the weapon and just beating on these guys to get, there's a gun, right? He has the little gun, like the shotgun there. Where, then all of a sudden leads to the gang fight where, he's being teamed up on by the gang and, they start overwhelming him and with his numbers and things like that. I think that's who this guy is. It's all about coming upon these guys, destroying these guys, taking out the filth. It's what kind of damage can I do to you to put a stop to you ever contaminating my world, or the world, not my world, the world. Because I don't think he would, I don't think he would put the label "my" on it. I never see him having a big sense of self. I don't know if you agree with me on that, and if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. That's one of the things that I'm marveling at with him is this is not a guy who likes himself or hates himself. He's more focused on the outward disgust at this filth. And that's the only way I can put it, and I think that's his identity. And when he puts on that mask, it really is like he's this cleaning machine that will never really stop, because what he's trying to clean up, I think there's always going to be that, and this isn't me, I'm a positive person, but there is always going to be a dark underbelly that's going to be there. Just like there's going to be an extreme good side as well. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to have a world where you have that perfection. And I don't think he's looking for that either. I think he just likes beating down on the filth, because I think he likes punishing the filth. I think that's what it is. I think he likes punishing them, not so much himself.
And I'm not going to argue at all any of those points, because that is a huge part. That is, the motivation behind Rorschach. I'm saying subconsciously, he doesn't probably even realize this. He probably doesn't even know he's doing this. Okay. But there is this level underneath it. There's just underbelly underneath it that is.
Are you seeing this somewhere? Are you? And this isn't me disputing. Are you seeing it, or is this speculation just from your own thing? 'Cause I'm not seeing that anywhere.
This is off-page thinking.
Okay.
This is 100% off-page thinking. It's just like it's my off-page thinking that I had with, Sally, thinking that she could become an actual real superhero, which, there was no real motivation, no real imagery in the books. But in my head, I think I could. In my head, I think I could be the force that turns it around and actually has her do the right thing. It's that same level of neuroses, that same level of just thinking beyond what's the written word in front of me that has me analyzing and studying Rorschach, which in a way is a futile effort, because you never really could study this man. You never really could. And we see that in Watchmen when the Shrink's like, there's nothing I can do for this guy. I can't do anything with him. There is just that complete level of whether it's 100% full-on insanity, 100% level of his acceptance of who he is, in that he would not want to change. He doesn't want to grow. He doesn't want to go to the happy place, because for him, this is who he is. This is his life. This is his mission. This is Rorschach. He is no longer that other man. That other person is dead, buried, body cremated, and ashes scattered to the universe.
You know what? I get what you're saying, and I'm. This isn't me disputing it, but this is the way I look at it. I don't think he gives that a second thought. I think other people who don masks will say, I'm burying this other identity. I think this is, for him, a sense of purpose and identity. I don't think Walter is... I don't think he considers Walter. I think Walter was so, I don't want to use the word submissive, but he was so discarded and buried in this filthy world that he never developed a sense of feeling of worth. You know, like he was told he's so worthless by mom, why he ruins everything and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he hates himself. I don't think he knows who he is. I don't think he ever did. I think Rorschach gave him a sense of forward movement, you know, to something other than just not being there.
Yeah.
You know, being background. It was almost like background noise when he was Walter in his mind. I find him fascinating now because I think this is something that this series has latched onto, but I also think it's something that it's been highlighted before Watchmen, but also goes back to Moore's work. If you look at all of these puzzle pieces and put it together, you rarely see a person put on a mask who does not have an identity of some sort, either that they're enhancing and allowing to be out there in the public because they put on the mask, or hiding and burying. I don't think Rorschach's doing any of that. I don't think that this is his, like, consciously saying, now I can finally be me. I don't think he has that, and I don't think he hates himself so much that he's burying himself. I don't think that there is a Walter identity to him. I think this is his first time that he has an identity when he's Rorschach. And it really is all about cleaning up this disgusting filth that he's seen forever. You know, this was kind of like his coming of age, his awakening when he put on Rorschach, and that was it. I don't think there was something before. Because I think we have this great debate with Batman all the time as far as who is he when he's on and the mask's on and off and stuff like that. Superman. Is it really Clark Kent? Is it really Superman? And, you know, what do those two identities mean? There is no dual identity. I don't think Walter is much of an identity. I think he's more influenced by Rorschach than the other way around. You know, I think that element of him, I don't know, it's just such a bizarre... interesting. He's like a walking case study.
Yes.
The ink blotch is so perfect for this character because he's a walking case study. And like to label him is so interesting and unique. And I'm not going to say you're wrong for your speculation. I have no idea what's going on in this guy's head. I don't see it that way. And I think it's because I'm so invested in this idea that I think Walter's a lot more, I don't want to say a completely blank slate, but certainly a lot more of a blank slate than we're used to for the people under the mask of any of these vigilantes that we tend to read in comic books. And I think it is just because I think he's driven by this disgust now of this world. And I don't know, I just really, I love that we can have this debate about him, and I don't know that I necessarily feel that you're wrong as much as just you're coming at him from your own perspective on who you think he is. And I don't think he knows who he is, so I don't know how we can. And I find that fascinating.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's funny because I think in a way we are saying the same thing and we are looking at him in the same light. It's just, I think how we express it, it sounds different. Because as you're talking, I completely agree with you that, you know, the Walter character, the Walter identity doesn't exist. There is only Rorschach. And I say whether he has the mask on or off, he's still Rorschach. It's just when he has the mask on is when he's actually going to sit there and beat somebody down. When he has the mask off, he's observing. It's his intelligence gathering. It's his, you know, kind of the reconnaissance that he has to do for when he puts his face back on. It's his way of blending into the shadows, into the backgrounds, and doing what he needs to do. Because sometimes you wear the face, sometimes you don't wear the face. I don't think there is a Walter anymore at all.
Right. I agree with you on that. I do think that he looks at the mask, like you said. I love the way you put that with his face. He clearly looks at the mask as his face, but I don't think when he takes the mask off that he isn't Rorschach. I think that it's important to him to have the mask on. I think that that's where he starts to have more of an identity. But it's funny. I don't even think, if you were to ask him, how do you feel about Rorschach? I don't think you would get from him this sense of love or hate about Rorschach. I think, like we do see with vigilantes like Batman, putting that face on gives him a sense of purpose, a mission. And I don't know that it's necessarily driven by a benefit for others as much as looking at this filth and social injustice as something that he just wants to stamp out, but he's not. I don't think he's doing it for the purpose of making the world better for that little child walking down the street. I don't think he's not driven that way. I think it's convenient for other vigilantes like, in that Crime Busters where you've got, Ozymandias and Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan. I think because of the side he tends to skew on, they want to stamp these things out too. I think Night Owl's reasons are more pure. He has issues clearly too, as we saw, but I think his reasons are more of your traditional superhero reasons. Whereas Rorschach, I don't think, if you asked him, are you doing this for anybody else? No, I'm doing it because this disgusts me. And I really think that's his motivation, disgust. And it's not disgust over what's happened to him. It's disgust over what these people stand for and all that, which is unique. It's not revenge. It's disgust. And there's a distinct difference between those words. And I feel like that's something that is just being oozing out of him in a way that you don't see with other characters, which I think makes him more fascinating. And I wouldn't have said this when I originally read Watchmen. And that isn't a testament against Watchmen because of it. I don't think I was at the age where I would have seen him this way. This is something over, multiple reads of Watchmen, then, reading this. And I think, just an older me having looked at this character for so many years, I think I'm seeing him in a light now with fresh eyes because I think I've been away from him for a while. The last time I really heavily read Watchmen was back when we did it on the show. I've read it since then, but I can't tell you the last time I have since before Watchmen, the last time that I read it. But the movie was out and stuff like that. I was into the whole Watchmen thing. Really, really enjoyed it. I haven't really, since the DVD or Blu-ray release of the movie, I haven't really been heavily pulled into the Watchmen world. So I think a little bit of time away, after my 3 phases of Watchmen, really, this third phase coming back to Watchmen for this reason, I think I'm just seeing this character with a fresh set of eyes. And I think it's due, and it's a testament to the various creators that have worked on him in this before Watchmen, because I really find him just fascinating in a way. I always did, but it's very different now.
Oh, definite. Yeah. It's weird because, when you're talking about the 3 phases of Watchmen, I'm like, yeah, there have been, because my introduction was for the show, and then when we had the movie come out, and now this. So I've had more recent, I've had a more compiling of the experience of the Watchmen, but this is something, and I keep staring at my Absolute Watchmen that I have over there, and I'm just dying to grab it and read it, but I kept telling myself, I'm going to wait until before Watchmen's done. And it's killing me because it's right there. It's within reach. I could just grab it and start reading it, but I gotta, it's part of that. I have to have discipline.
Now, this big dude.
Yeah.
Was he ever identified by his name? He's this big hulking monster looking guy. And Rorschach was already beat up by overwhelming numbers. And that's one of the things I actually, we've seen him as a very intimidating character. He comes in hard, he comes in strong, he comes in fierce, but he hasn't had formal training per se. He's thug style, punches, kicks, probably the violence that he's grown up surrounded by, he mimics as well, uses that, but he just keeps coming because he's driven by this anger towards the filth, which is, I think that's the part that keeps grabbing me on this. Like, even in that moment where I think other heroes would be, how can I escape from this? How can I get out of this? He isn't motivated like that. With him, it's still spitting in the face of it. He will not give them the satisfaction of being scared. He doesn't, and a matter of fact, that I don't think is even entering into his consciousness, where another hero would be saying, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction. He's just mad. I mean, he looks at this guy as an affront, and he's a very pretty man.
Okay.
With his little pig nose and everything like that. I don't know what happened to this guy. Oh boy. But it's funny, Rorschach gets royally beat up in this, and he looks really good compared to this guy.
Yeah, I'm saying facial scar, facial burning. Mm-hmm. Guy probably was actually whole body, because you can see parts of his hands. Yeah. My guess is this dude was set on fire, and part of me wonders if it was Rorschach who did it to him, and the guy's this is payback to Rorschach.
Yeah, I don't know, or I wonder if maybe it may have been the guy he took over for. Maybe that's how he got his spot, because he just managed to survive, and because he survived and was able to work past that pain, it just led to him being in more of a leadership role. I don't know. I was fascinated by him, because I was fascinated with this whole idea that Rorschach just got beat up royally. This is going on. You've got this police case that you can understand, where the police are like sitting there saying, we've got to cover this up for right now, because, if we're not careful, we're not going to be able to bring this down, get any information, or it could come back to haunt us. And it's a different way of operating, because, the different era. Because nowadays, this would be all over the news.
Yeah, nowadays you look at this, it would be flashed up there, and there's no way to hide it and cover up, because people will be screaming, no, we need to know exactly what's going on, and there'd be a whole media circus surrounding it, and it would, in a way, it's funny, because in a way I kind of like when the police did cover up some of this stuff and tried to keep some of it out of the media. Now, on the other hand, it's not exactly 100% positive thing to keep the information from the public, right. But it's kind of I don't know. I get so sick of just seeing just the darkness and just seeing the negative and just seeing the ugly of society. Part of me wishes we didn't always get that. Sometimes
that's what Rorschach though is angry about. See, it's funny, everything you're saying. I think that's why the police sequence worked for me. Because you're being every time we see something else in Rorschach's world, even if they made the justification that we're keeping this secret to be able to not contaminate the case, to be able to make a way forward. I don't know that that's necessarily what it is, though.
See, I kind of read it as it was a lot of that. And I think part of it is just because I usually jump to the side of the police. So I'm thinking, okay, they want to protect the crime scene. They don't want to have too much information out there, because then, one, you run the risk of copycats. You run the risk of letting the bad guy know exactly what you know and how close you are to him. But there is a side of it, I think, that they're trying to keep the truth out of there to keep themselves not looking as bad. They don't want to have that it's 200 body count as opposed to 3 body count. They want to try to minimize the damage, minimize the negative press. And
I could be being harsh on them too. It's funny, the more you're talking about that, I'm like, I can see a lot of what you're saying. I think what it is for me, and I'm sorry, I'll let you go back to that, because I know I'm cutting you off real quick. I think what it is to me though is I'm seeing such a dark world that he's surrounded by. I guess I'm looking for more darkness, and maybe it is because I'm following Rorschach a little too closely, and maybe that I think he would view them harshly, and in a way that's, I think you're more accurate than Rorschach would be, and I think I'm probably more seeing it from Rorschach's side because I'm following him a little too closely in this. So I think you're right. I'm sorry. Please continue. You were connecting with me on a big level with what you were saying. I think you're right.
Well, it's just and it's funny because as I'm talking, I don't want to come across one way, but I don't want to come across the other way. I don't think you can pick. It's not A or B. It's not, one or the other. There is this gray area. There is this meshing of covering and duty and, selfishness, but also sacrifice. That it's part of what makes humanity. It's part of what makes us people, but it's part of that Rorschach doesn't have that gray area.
Yeah.
And that's something that, because in Watchmen we saw that in the end, when after everything was done, large chunk of New York was blown up, large part of Moscow was blown up. The world was working together. They had this common imaginary enemy that they were facing. Everyone's like, Rorschach's the only one who said no compromise. Not even the face of oblivion, no compromise. And he couldn't see the plus and minus behind it. It was either yes or no. That was wrong, had to go out and tell everybody. And we saw how wonderful that turned out for him. And it's the same type of story going on with this Bard, which is something that it was kind of neat because I was so focused on Rorschach, on the Rorschach beating, the Rorschach past, that it kind of slipped through the backdrops until like my second and third read through, and I started thinking, oh yeah, we got this whole Bard story. How is Rorschach going to tie into that? And then that got me thinking, what's going to happen when Rorschach runs into this guy? Is he going to what kind of sick, twisted stuff is he going to do to this guy? Or is it just going to be a simple Rorschach beating, throw him off of a, top of a building? There's so many different ways that this is going to play out that I'm really fascinated by this side story that was only a couple pages in this, that it's got me thinking, okay, where's this going to go? And it's part of my excitement towards the next couple Rorschach issues because I want to see where this story goes. So we got this cool upfront, bam, Rorschach story where he goes down the sewer, gets beaten to a pulp, doesn't die, and he's getting ready for his vengeance. But we also have this side story that's going to come out, and this is all this is just a 4-issue miniseries, so there's going to be a lot of story getting told in these issues that, again, I'm like, yes.
Now, one of the things I want to clarify, too, when I said earlier that I felt that, and I know you weren't disputing this, I'm just kind of more clarifying my position. When I said earlier that I thought Rorschach would understand some of the motivations of Adrian, it wasn't that I was saying that he would agree with what Adrian was doing. It was more that I think he would understand certain things Adrian's probably disgusted with when it comes to the world. Because Rorschach, you're 100% correct. Rorschach was one of those who would not compromise. He would not. What Adrian was doing was wrong. The world should know about what he's doing. That what really happened, and that picture should not be painted. It's really just adding to, in his eyes, the filth, because a lot of the filth that he was exposed to came from lies and came from window dressing, came from perceptions that people were putting out there of what things were when they were really something else that was far more sinister. And I think that's something in his eyes, everything is black and white. And that's where he operates from. I don't know. I just thought that this was just a really fascinating study into the character. The artwork, I want to make sure as we continue on, we do talk about the Lee Bermejo artwork. From everything from the covers, from the cover by Lee Bermejo, where you had Rorschach within the mask. You could actually see on that front cover where you've got Rorschach face mask, and then Rorschach, as the ink blotches swirl into Rorschach within there. I just thought it was a very cool artistic choice. And, we got cool covers. Some of the alternate covers were done by Jim Steranko, which was that's a really cool art piece. And Jim Lee, of course. But that one from Lee Bermejo was one that just kind of struck me as an interesting design choice that I thought was really cool.
Oh, big time. This is my third read-through. My art read-throughs were just really just amazing stuff. Starting off that opening page when he's talking about his childhood, that New Year's where he stood on the fire escape the entire time, and just everything, fingers turn blue and then black, and mother rushes him to the emergency room and all that. That was a great story, but just that cityscape of New York right there was just something that I could sit there and just stare at that going, dang, that's awesome. And then you kind of get into some of the physical comedy. And it's funny to say comedy, but there is those funny moments with Rorschach where he's like, serious smack. Say what, clown? Smack! I'm serious. I howled with that one because I thought that was just a funny way to kind of, I got a little sick sense of humor, but it's still, there was a little bit of funny and a little bit of humor behind it just because that's Rorschach's style. That's his sense of humor. But, again, you see the visual look on the drug dealer's face when his arm's getting wrenched, and just that, that kind of, you can see and feel the pain coming from him, all the way to with the big bad crime. When you really start looking at just his face, how it's just the burn marks, and you comment on like his pig nose because part of his nose burned off, but just that full on scarring and just kind of the blotching parts on the top of his head, and just there's some really just cool nasty moments where it's complete ugly, disgusting, but it is artwork and it is absolutely beautiful stuff that they take this horrific and make it something special. And I love the physical aspects, the fight sequences when Rorschach's getting beat down. I love just how they did with the group team up, and I could feel the punches, I could hear the kicks and the oof kind of sound effects. Even though they didn't throw the stuff in there, I was adding it just because I was so into what I was visually seeing.
Zowie.
Yeah, I was seeing all the bamps and the biffs and bow, and a lot of words that rhyme with mother trucker.
Right. It's funny when you were talking about the comedy bits. I was thinking to myself, coming from ABC this fall, Jim Seguelin, his friend Rorschach. Comedy is just filthy. Because I'm like, where are you seeing comedy moments? Then I was looking at the page you're saying, okay, I'm like, I kind of get where he's coming from with it. Because I'm like, wow, is this a dark book? This is like, you talk about darkness, when they talk about a certain areas got really dark, you don't get much darker than a Rorschach comic, because there really is no happy, bright spot in this book. Yeah. And I mean that as a testament to the creative team, because there isn't in this guy's world, in this guy's mind, except for maybe Night Owl. Maybe. Were you surprised this was a 4-issue mini?
Yeah, I was, and it's funny. I'm hoping I wish it would be longer, just because I'm really enjoying the story. But I'm confident the story will be done in 4, just because the creative team, what they've given us in issue 1, they clearly know the character. They clearly have something in plan, and it's again another before Watchmen story that it's absolutely wonderful. That I'm like, yes, this lived up to the hype in my mind. When I saw Azzarello writing Rorschach, I was like, oh, that's gonna be good. And it's exceeded expectations out of the gate, issue 1. So I only want 6 issues because I want more story on this. I'd love for another character. I'm hoping that they do some more Rorschach stories later on, do another before Watchmen.
The artistic talent assigned to these books as well, that really got on board these projects. When they announced Brian Azzarello, I'm with you, amen. I was like, whoa. Just as excited when they announced Lee Bermejo. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, you can't. I mean, how do you get a better team than that? This is really just. I mean, it's a team that just on paper sounds like they're going to nail Rorschach. You know what I mean? Brian Azzarello, Lee Bermejo, do Cinderella. I mean, that doesn't sound the same as Brian Azzarello, Lee Bermejo, but Rorschach. Although, I'll be honest with you, I would read their Cinderella comic. Because that would be pretty wickedly interesting, I'm sure. But this book just really has everything. What amazes me about the artwork, and it's one of the things I love about comic book artwork and my favorite artists, is when people have definitive styles. And that style sure grows, changes, and evolves as they do, and that's a testament to the creator. I think that's stuff that I notice, like just how much more I continue to marvel at their art as they grow. But I mean, Lee Bermejo is an artist with a definitive style. I can pick out Lee Bermejo's stuff, and that's something that like immediately makes me attentive to that artist. Nicola Scott, I shout her out all the time. We've shouted out people like Freddie Williams, Jamal Igle. These are all people who, like, if you think of those people, they couldn't have 4 more different styles. Your George Perez, John Byrne, Neil Adams. You go on and on just of creators who in comics have had unique, definitive styles. That's what I like in art. It's when somebody has a unique style something, a unique approach. And I don't know, I think that's something, I think the artwork I'm seeing in All-Star Western is a very unique approach and style. I like that in comics. And this book stands out for me as having a style that was really wow. Everybody associated with putting together the creative teams on these projects has just been doing a bang-up job, because even after we've discussed them on the show, because a lot of times when we discuss something on the show, it runs into two categories. Because I've got to move on to new things for new episodes of our podcast. There are some times, though, where they're favorite books, or you'll mention something on the show, or, I'll read something from one of our listeners, or, I'll see a creator mention something on a Twitter page or a blog about, the issue, something I might have missed thematically. I'll go back and reread. I've been doing that with these with no hesitation. After we've talked about them, I've been going back and rereading them after you and I were done recording, just because I really have enjoyed this whole experience. And I think it's a testament to the quality of what's being put out here. This is really special material. And I just really, I know I've a broken record applauding that. But when you see a scene with Rorschach climbing out of that sewer that I just so wanted to see, and it was built up the way that it was, and it leads to him in that, yes, you see him, popping the pills and all that stuff to try and get himself moving again. But that diner sequence, and this is what I mean, it's pacing. Everything from the beatdown to the final panel in the diner. If you did not have every panel in between, that sequence wouldn't matter. The muggers, they made a mistake. Meaning you didn't have anything on you? No. Meaning I'm not dead. That's how you end an issue like this. That is exactly how you end an issue like this. And it wouldn't matter as much if you didn't take me here by having this guy do this slow crawl, after, Pig Face is driving down the street. You got this slow crawl out of the sewer, right back to, popping the pills, right back into the diner. And the diner workers, their reactions were just stellar. It really just ended on a high note for me. Just a testament to what this creative team put together here. Because that's when you build a moment. You build to a moment. One panel alone wouldn't matter. You've got to build a story. You've got to develop a visual and, with words, with dialogue, with narrative, a story that makes you go, ugh. This is a man who was beat up and crawling, and at the end I'm ready to start high-fiving people because of the last line. And it's all because of that crawl that we saw that got him to that diner.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the diner workers, because for me, I absolutely cheered on that last final panel, but it was just that lead into it. And it was even just their simple discussion they were having when the waitress is saying, we're surrounded by wild savages. And the one guy's like, hey, what's that supposed to mean? And she was just about to defend herself, saying, hey, I'm not talking, this. I'm talking about just how people are. And they were just about to get into this heated debate, and everything stops. And just the look of, whoa, Jesus, buddy. The look on that guy's face, the look on her face, she's like, what happened? And you could see, and it completely derails everything, completely stops any line of thought they had. And it goes right into that, directs it right back to what happened, what is going on in Rorschach. And it was just that accentuation and just anticipation of the future. I was really, these couple, those four first panels, on the first page of that was really just a really cool, whoa kind of moment. And you start looking at the background and just the detail in the diner, the behind the scenes with the other patrons, with the other, just the other waitress back there, and dealing with, the simple stuff like the food in the back there that they, took the time to draw all that in there. I was just really just impressed with just how this sequencing went through.
I was impressed that he drew the distortion in the security mirror in the pharmacy. If you look at the security mirror, that little warping that you're going to get because of the shape of the security mirror was present. I'm endlessly impressed when an art team is able to pull those kind of effects off. It's little things like that. That's what I notice I don't notice that in my first read through ever. My first read through, I'm engrossed in the story, and I'm engrossed a bit in the art. I'm engrossed a bit in the writing. I'm kind of going on the journey. It's, when I do my multiple read-throughs, I'll look at things like that and go, oh my gosh, that security mirror thing was really cool. And him climbing over the counter because, he's really at the point where he is so beaten up and spent. It's really, what can I do to get to where I need to as quickly as possible to function on some level. Then he goes back for the necessities like food,
Well, the thing I thought was really kind of cool on that scene was, and this is something second and third read through. You'll see there are multiple drawers open. There are pills spilled on the ground. Yeah. He was rifling through. He had to go through multiple drawers before he found the actual pain pills, before he found what he needed. And I thought that was a neat little cool attention to detail, that he's not just going to go right to the first spot, find it. There's going to be some searching. There's going to be a little bit of chaos that he's going to have to go through to get to what he wanted. I was like, that was a neat moment for me.
Yeah, it's the detail and atmosphere. That's one of the things I really liked about this journey. And I think in the story it was done. I think in the art it was done. I think there was an atmosphere, a mood, and a tone that was set throughout the pacing that, I just was marveling at everything. And maybe that's why this is 4 issues. Although Dr. Manhattan is the same thing. I almost called him Dr. Midnight. Dr. Manhattan's also 4 issues. I'm wondering what leads to the termination on that, because there's a number of these that are 6 issues. And I'm wondering why, a Dr. Manhattan or a Rorschach wound up being 4. And, I think, what is it?
Ozzy's 6.
I think Night Owl's 4.
Minutemen's 6.
Comedian's 6.
Yeah.
Night Owl, it looks like, is also 4. Wow. And Silk Spectre's 4. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what led to the determinations on these. And I'm not knocking that. It's probably story driven. I don't know, but it's.
I'm wondering if it's connection to multiple titles. Because you think about it, Minutemen has multiple characters, multiple connections going on. I'm assuming Ozzy's going to eventually have multiple stuff connecting, and maybe, and same thing with a Comedian.
Yeah, I don't know, because Ozzy sort of already has had things connecting to Comedian.
Yeah,
at the end of the second issue. So I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Anything else you want to say about Rorschach before we go on to Dr. Manhattan?
Yeah, that's about it.
Well, let's jump right into Dr. Manhattan number 1.
Next discussion will be Dr. Manhattan number 1. The scripts by J. Michael Straczynski, with art by Adam Hughes, colors by Laura Martin, letterers Steve Wands, with cover by Adam Hughes, variant covers by Paul Pope, with Laverne Kandinsky, Jim Lee, Scott Williams, Alex Sinclair. Assistant editor is Camilla Zhang, associate editor Chris Conroy, and editor Mark Chiarello. Of course, Watchmen was created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons.
Yeah, the color work of Laura Martin. First of all, I think this is probably one of your first exposures to Adam Hughes on art in the issue, as versus on covers. Laura Martin on colors, I see a lot of her color work in the Dark Tower series from Marvel that they're producing, and I've really enjoyed her color work over there. So it was really great to see her working on this project. And it's Straczynski's scripts. I love Straczynski's writing. And this one was, for me, really particularly interesting because you've got this guy who his whole life was really disconnected from the world, but it's also it's funny how this series is putting forth an idea of which came first, the chicken or the egg, because it's really making you question, did he create himself or not? And I want to talk about that as we go through, because I really love when he starts backtracking on his life and he's taking a look at his life. I love that he's the narrator in this book as we're looking through and seeing different avenues, of who's in the coffin, what's in the box, what's not in the box, what's in the test site, what's not in the test site, what causes these new possibilities. We get the definite validation that he was the one who changed his meeting with Silk Spectre, which we'll have to talk about when we get there, and how that changed certain paths. It was just something this was one, I was wondering how much I was going to be into this one with Dr. Manhattan, because he's a funny little bugger in the sense that he is such a cold fish that I thought to myself, I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna have a tough time connecting with Dr. Manhattan, because sometimes he's so distant, especially when he became Dr. Manhattan, that's part of the fascination, but you usually get more off of his interaction with others. Wow, was this handled so well? Because I felt like another great example of how, because of the tone and the style of the book and the art team chosen, and just the way the writer chose to approach it, I really feel like I know Dr. Manhattan in a way that I never did, and how much his entire life has been influenced by this idea of fixing things and putting them together and making them right, and how that influences who Dr. Manhattan is, the building things, the building blocks, understanding what causes things to be pieces parts, how he was able to reconstruct himself. I think all of that stuff ties so much into his life. And I don't know, I'm really was surprised at how much and how deeply I enjoyed the first issue of this miniseries.
Man, I tell you, when we first read Watchmen and that whole Mars sequence that was Dr. Manhattan, I can still recall just after the first read through sitting down going, huh? Being just completely lost and confused and bewildered. And when I first read through this, I had that same type of feeling.
Did you really?
And actually, this is a good thing, by the way. It means that this is the same type of character that I was reading there. And it's that same feeling. And once again, in the Before Watchmen series, there was that same connection and that same feeling, that same type of character that I had in the original that I'm getting in this story. Now, as I went through, just like I did with Watchmen, it took multiple read-throughs of actually reading and rereading and just going slow and focusing on what he's actually saying. And I got a grasp on what was happening. I got a grasp on who he is and what he's saying and where it is. I got a grasp of, say, the whatnot behind Dr. Manhattan once again. But it, just like with the original, with this one, it took multiple read-throughs. And for me, I was really enjoying the fact that this wasn't a watered-down version. This wasn't a cookie-cutter version, simplistic version of Dr. Manhattan. This is the same character that I read before, the same character that I found so fascinating the last time. I'm finding equally amazing this time. Yeah. And it's, again, there's always the questions, always the off-page thinking that is spurned out of this guy. I chuckled when you mentioned the chicken and the egg, because that was exactly where I was going, with this. By time I finished and got a solid grasp on who this was, what's going on here, that was one of the first questions that popped in my head. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's just such a simple statement, such a simple thought process can go such a wide spin of craziness, and that is part of the psyche behind this character, part of the confusion, the wonderment, the awe of this guy. When you read a cool Superman story, you're dealing with this mega powerful guy, but in the end, you kind of do know who Superman is. You got that feeling of the guy, of the Kansas farm boy, and you see and understand it. With this guy, you really, even after all I've read about him, I still don't completely understand what makes him tick. I still have room for question. I still have wonderment about him, and I don't know where he's going to go. And I think that's what makes the story that much fun for me. That's where I get my true enjoyment from this, is the fact that I completely don't know where it's going to go.
You do understand him. By the very fact that you said, I don't understand what makes him tick. That's what this guy's all about, understanding what makes things tick. Not just watches. The watches are like a metaphor. That's part of, as a kid, he got, because of his dad and, he became obsessed with this, what makes the watches work right down to their core, and putting them back together and making them work again and fixing them and all that. But that goes beyond that. He wants to know what makes humans work. He wants to know what makes the universe work. He wants to know, and go beyond. I have no doubt, if they did a sequel with Dr. Manhattan, we would see this guy exploring more and more of the universe, probably getting more and more disconnected from the humanity as he went further and further out, trying to discover the origins of the universe and what makes the universe tick. It would also make him much more dangerous, because where would he grow and what lines would he cross in order to discover those things? And we'll talk about it in this, just when he talks about a universe of possibilities, does he cross into other timelines, or does his presence, does his actions cause divergent timelines? That's always fascinating because he's genuinely traveling into his past, right? Not just thinking about it. He's revisiting it.
Yeah, he's back there now. He's an observer. And by being an observer, is he altering something in some way? And that was, again...
Or was he the original cause to begin with? Did he cause the freak accident? Is it necessary for his timeline for him to cause the accident that creates himself? And would you go back and see, this is one of the questions, and this is me speculating. I'm not saying this is what's happening. This is where my head was at from all that. And I know I'm jumping to the end, but I don't know with this discussion how we can't just go here and then pop back and talk about things. My question off of this thing is, does he need to cause what happened to himself to correct what he's seeing in front of him? And is that what happened all along? Or is it something else? But part of me went there. I'm like, whoa. Did he stop what happens to himself? And does he now need to cause it, or was he the original cause? I don't know. But that makes your head hurt when you think
big
about
time.
it. And I love that kind of stuff.
Like, big time.
I wouldn't want it in every one of my comics, but it certainly belongs in a Dr. Manhattan book.
Well, it's the past, the future, present all exist at the same time to him.
Yeah.
That's how he sees life. That's how he's always seen life. And that's what makes, again, part of the craziness and understanding and following him.
Yeah.
He is a philosophical discussion, an ongoing philosophical discussion where the ending will change based on what you're saying at that particular moment.
Yeah.
And it's that fluidity of time for him that makes things fascinating. And it's funny because when you mentioned, did he cause the accident? Did he not cause it? That was something that when eventually after the couple read-throughs, I started thinking about that. Then I started thinking, are we dealing with a multiverse version of this universe that he's seeing what could have happened, what might have been, or is he seeing what did actually happen and he needs to fix and change? That, again, I'm curious to see where this story is going to go. Because when this issue ended with that, it didn't happen. But there are no accidents. There's only yes and no. There's only the actual occurrences and non-occurrences. And I was just like, wait a minute, is he going to disappear? Is this not? And it was one of those ending moments where you sit down and go, okay, what's going to happen? And I don't completely know where they're going to go with this. I don't know how this is going to lay out. And it's, again, part of my excitement and enjoyment beyond the character is because I can't think like him. I can't put myself in his position, in his mindset. But I love when the story comes out. I love reading about it because he is so different from me. It's some of my enjoyment of some of the historical characters, the real life physical historical people that I like to read about and study are because they are so different than me. They have a different way of looking at life that I couldn't even possibly begin to accept that or begin to think this is my mindset. This is that type of character for me. He is so foreign to me that it is such a fascinating story to get.
It's funny, Jim talks about how he's not like Dr. Manhattan, but Jim moved recently, for people who didn't know, and one of the reasons why he had to move is last Halloween, he went all Blue Man Group and dressed as Dr. Manhattan from the movie, and his old neighborhood wouldn't let him live there anymore afterwards, so...
And the police kind of didn't want me around there. Yeah. And I've got that whole, can't go within 100 yards of schools now. But it's all, I'm glad some things that they kept with this artwork, that they did keep that aspect of the artwork just because it was such a kind of, what? Oh my God, I can't believe they're showing that in a comic book. I'm glad they did put it in here, but it's not so over the top and just so dun dun dun. It's there because it needs to be there, but it's not in your face, kind of ridiculousness.
Am I the only one that wanted him to have the kitty instead of the clock? I got a cat that looks like, I don't know, I wouldn't say just like that. Although when she was a kitten, I was playing with her in a box similar to that, and I was like looking at that kitten. And this is really, and I mean this totally as an endearing testament to the artwork that is Adam Hughes. I want so much to see more interior artwork books with Adam Hughes. I love his cover work. This is no knock on the cover work at all, but boy, is this a pretty book. And I would like to see him do more with Laura Martin. Because, wow, does this team just working together really just have an understanding of how to just deliver some really, really pretty artwork. It's a great partnership. The color tones of the characters. Like, I love the scene with him and his wife at the park. You know, when the two of them were just having that popcorn together. The way, like, the sun and the whole atmosphere is, like, reflecting off their faces. Like, the color tone of their faces. And the background scenery there and their clothes, just something about the shading of everything. It's just really sharp. I really like the look of it. That's a small panel, but that photograph was, I think, such a critical piece of Watchmen. And I just really love how that was captured in here, because I just really love the color work of it. To even, like, you know, things like the way that John stands off and apart from the rest of the world, like when he is Dr. Manhattan, when he's in that blue mode. He really looks so different than everybody else that you could see why people would be uncomfortable around him and would view him as almost alien in his presence. I don't know, there was something, I just thought the artwork was really just stunning, and I really want to see this. I wish I could see it on a monthly. I really wish I could see this artwork on a monthly. I'm glad we're going to have 4 months in a row of it in this Dr. Manhattan workbook, because it's been a while since I've seen Adam Hughes interiors, and I really love seeing this together, and the color work. It's funny how you get the right artist with the right colorist, and you just really get something that feels special, and this is one of those.
Yeah, the Crime Busters sequence.
Oh yeah,
that was something where I really enjoyed the artwork. Especially, you know, you got Silk Spectre, just the way she was drawn. They're just leaning up against the, you know, I guess that's a copier or some type of machinery, and just, you know, kind of in the side, but still very present, she was very obviously very boom right there, but it wasn't thrown in your face. Look at me, look at how sexy I am. But there was just that subtleness behind her, and just even with the wife getting jealous, you're staring at that girl. Now pay attention. You know, you can feel the venom and feel the anger, and, you know, as it's just playing out. I loved these art moments, and it was a cool story, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of neat. But when I sat back and, you know, my art read through, where I was just looking at the images, and you just see that, and you can kind of see a little bit of a goofy grin, kind of a, hey, how you doing look on his face as he's looking at her, as it's that first connection. I was like, dang, that is cool. We're seeing the moment, and this is, yeah.
I really loved his moments with Night Owl, the original Night Owl, when the two, like, Night Owl was getting older and older. It was towards the twilight of his career, and he was talking with John, and the two of them were connecting. And it's funny, these are two people I don't know that you would normally expect to have, like, a meaningful conversation like this, but this moment where he's talking about, you know, I think maybe I should just walk away. What would you do instead? Fix cars. Can you imagine that? There's something about fixing things that, I don't know, makes me feel good. Maybe that's why we got into all this stuff in the first place. To fix things. To fix the world. But I can't. I want to force the cars to work because I can't force the universe to make sense. Can't control everything. It's funny how the both of them kind of withdraw into this fixing things as a way of making their own sense of the world, making their own sense of accomplishment, this sense of putting something together to making something work again, when a lot of times in our world, you can't force our world to work that way. I think that's what Adrian's trying to do in Watchmen. He's trying to fix the world to make it work, and you can't force that. You know, and it's something that John needed to learn, I think, through that whole sequence as well, as he was getting more and more withdrawn and disconnected from his humanity, as we see a lot of, you know, this issue laying out some of those seeds of how this is something he struggled with his own life. I mean, when he's sitting there with that pretty girl in front of him, who's really trying to do the nice thing and saying, okay, quirky guy, he probably thinks he's cute, you know, also probably knows he's just this nice seemingly harmless person. Let me extend him an olive branch. He's got this pretty girl right in front of him who's clearly coming on to him. You know, I say they're wrong. You just need to be given a chance, a reason, an opening, so you can be surprised by life once in a while. And he's so totally uncomfortable with that. He finds comfort in the structure of putting a watch back together, of repairing it. It's a controlled structure, something he can take apart, something he can rebuild. He knows the A, he knows the B. He doesn't need to know any of the other letters of the alphabet. That girl who's leaving there is chock full of every letter from C to Z. And he's uncomfortable with those letters because, a lot of times they zigzag. And, that's something that he is not good with. And I love that, symmetry, order, control. It's all about control. And he's relating to all that. It's what led him as a scientist to the projects he's got involved with, led him to the accident. And those are things that I was really eating up in all this, seeing how this isn't something that happened to him when he became Dr. Manhattan. It was something that influenced who Dr. Manhattan is. And I love that. I think, it's an embodiment of that got rebuilt. And also, I like that, theory. Was I ever really this man, or was I influenced by this man when I put myself together? And that's something that goes back to that chicken and the egg thing again, too.
Yeah, you think back to Watchmen when he's talking about when he met his wife, how they were at the bar and the wife bought him a drink. He's like, it was the first time a woman had ever done that. And it was just, the wife was so open and so aggressive and just so, this is who I am, come on. Kind of basically pulled him kicking and screaming out of his shell and got him to, probably let his hair down, probably for the first time in his entire life. And I loved seeing, just this uptight kid, this focused kid who's only going to do this knowing what he becomes, knowing he does have that moment where he just, laughs and has fun and eventually becomes Manhattan, where all that goes away again. And it's a cool, just process where we talked about with Rorschach about, what is Rorschach? Who is Rorschach? Same kind of arguments and discussions could be, similar type could be made for the Doctor here. Who is the Doctor? What is his personality? And that was the sequence when Dr. Manhattan goes and visits his father's on his deathbed, and the father's like, they killed my boy. He's gone. And he kind of has that realization, yeah, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not him. He did die on that day. I am something else. What am I? And I loved seeing just that, again, another character who doesn't have the alternate identity. He is only, boom, Dr. Manhattan.
I wonder if we're going to see what his life would have been like if he escaped the accident.
See, part of me thinks that's what we're going to get. And whether Manhattan then in the end sees what the life is like and he goes, no, we need to have the accident, boom, and changes it, or does it play out and it's like an alternate Elseworld, or is it something completely different that I haven't even begin to comprehend yet?
I liked how we saw the possibilities of what would happen if he hadn't messed with the cards at the Cardbusters. Yeah. Where we saw that Night Owl would have wound up with Silk Spectre, and the two, and even how we get to see later that Rorschach thought all along that's how it should have been.
Yeah.
That Night Owl should have wound up with Silk Spectre. Those two would have been a good team. And I don't know. It's funny how his one decision set a possible life path. And that proves that it wouldn't have been Bridgeman that would have gotten Laurie on the superhero path, but Night Owl instead. Yeah. Well, I think she always was, though. I think she was always beyond what her mom was. We see that in her miniseries, which is, I don't know. I thought there was something that, I think that's what they ultimately ended up connecting over to. I don't think he would have. I think she was already the hero before then.
Yeah. She definitely was already on the path of heroship, and she knew she was doing it. There was some mommy issues and some of that, but in her heart, she was doing it for the right reasons. We do see that in her series, but it does beg to the question does raise: what if Night Owl from the very beginning had been teamed up with Silk Spectre? What would his universe been like? What would her universe be like? Would they have stepped down? Would they have continued on? What about the relationship with the mom? Because that those two always had just this butting heads up until the ending of Watchmen, when we kind of see them making peace with each other. But if Night Owl had been in Laurie's life the entire time, would he would have been a peacemaker. Who knows? There would have been a better mother-daughter relationship, from the very beginning throughout all this. It's, it kind of, again, it's what ifs, questions that always rise up from when you start thinking Watchmen, when you start thinking of these different universes.
It's funny how in tone this book is so much different than the other ones because of all the crazy, heady, world-changing possibilities that any little fault could change in this. His presence there. I don't know. I'm going to be very curious to see what ends up happening with this. How far he will follow his other self in his lifespan.
One of the art pages, or art panels, really, that, again, is something that every time I look at and I go back to, it always does kind of catch me off guard and does have me just go, dang, that is cool. And it's not even one of the more complex pages. It's just that simple panel when, Manhattan's really starting to think about what if, the timeline, what would the future him who already witnessed the accident, what would have, and it was kind of that opening where he begins before he heads back. And he's just kind of staring out. He's on Mars. He's just staring off into space. And you have the pupilless eyes, just those bright white eyes and the blue face just looking up. And there is just that wonderment that goes on. And it's, it always just captures me and always just catches me. And I'm always like, dang, that is cool. And it's art in its simplistic form. It's art. It's not trying to be complex. It doesn't need it. It gives you the emotion you need from boom, right? What's right there. And it's a definite appreciation, again, for this art team, for this creation team that can get me thinking and get me into the character just with one simple small panel in the bottom corner of the page.
Do you think I guess when he's giving this speech, I am not John, but John became me. His perspective informed me. His perspective created me. Like, he's saying that he's John, but John evolved, right?
See, these are part of the stuff that always confuses me when I deal with him.
See, and I love this kind of stuff because I love trying to figure out where he's going with this. Because he's not saying that he's totally not John anymore. He's saying that because of the accident, he's become some other being, a being that's influenced by who he used to be, but he's no longer who he used to be.
See, when you look at the pages where, when he's talking to his dad, he's like, yeah, he's right. I'm not John. And it's,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, but John became me. And it's in a way, I kind of think of it as when you look at in the Buffy the Vampire universe, when a person becomes a vampire, it's not that same person. It's a demon who comes into the husk, but that demon's personality is affected by the memories, is affected by who was that person. It's not the same person you're dealing with, but they do have that type of, knowledge, experience, just there's a semblance of who that person was in that body. It's the definition of soul. John's soul has left, but there's still the husk, there still is the life energy, still is that life force that is Dr. Manhattan. And it's that force that works with what was John to become who he is.
Wow. See, I don't know that his soul's really left. I guess I don't know if I'm seeing it that way. Although there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I don't know. Maybe that is the route they're going to go. I'm curious to see if they define this more as it goes on. I guess there's that part of myself that kind of wonders if it's something more like what Rachel was saying to Bruce at the end of Batman Begins, talking about how the mask that he wears is that Bruce Wayne face that he has. It's when he puts on the mask of Batman that's really his true face and who he is. And there's that implication then that little boy she grew up with, that boy that she still loves, is no longer there. But, if he comes back, I'll be there for him, that type of thing, that kind of implication.
Yeah.
And, yet this really is the same person. I guess I'm wondering if John's really kind of the same thing. This accident, this incident, getting these powers has somehow influenced him becoming this something more. And because of that, he's lost a piece of his humanity because of the powers he's gained, because of the perspective he's gained. When you have that kind of power, how can you still be that same man who went to the carnival with the pretty girl? You're not that guy anymore. It just doesn't fit. I don't know. I don't know what route they're going to go with all this, but I like that it's fun to speculate with him. I think he's the one that I think is most open to speculation so far out of all of them, because there's a lot of this that gets really heady, where you can start kind of, especially when you get into the time travel and the pivotal events that influence one possible happening in the life, and if those events don't happen, it could mean that another possibility later down the road comes to a head. That kind of stuff, it's that stuff where you do literally go, like you're saying, my head hurts from it. But that's the kind of stuff that I love the most. I really get into that.
Yeah, there is an enjoyment behind, well, at least for me, there is an enjoyment for not understanding. And it is that quest for knowledge. It is that pursuit of, it's the work I got to put into this book to make me understand it, to make me grasp it, and to make me, truly and deeply enjoy it. Because it's not just a simple, boom, sit down, read, laugh, enjoy it. There is work being put into this book, and it's making the experience so much better for me. It's making me enjoy this character more and more. He is the one, this is the title that I was the most concerned about, wondering, worried about, just because I remember my Mars experience when it was just Dr. Manhattan. I remember the confusion. I remember being lost. And I was like, am I going to have to read 4 issues where the entire time I'm going, what the heck's going on here? Well, I had that on the first read-through, had that on the second read-through. By the third read-through, I started getting a grasp of him. By fourth, fifth read-throughs, I'm kind of getting comfortable with him. And now with our discussion, it's put me looking at him in a different light as well. So there's going to be another read-through after we're done talking about this, just because I've now got other theories going on here. And then when issue 2 comes out, I'm going to probably reread issue 1 again, just because every time I'm reading this, I'm looking at something different. I'm noticing something, more from this. And it's same thing with art stuff, where when he first did his time travel back, and you get that really cool full-page spread, which is him on top of, the more shadowy of his body on top of his regular face. I've stared at that image multiple times, and every single time you notice a little bit something different. You notice how on the shadow body, if you look closely, you can still see his white eyes in it. Whereas the first time I saw it, I just saw the solid blue shadowy body. And then as I was later, like, oh, look, there it is. And then, oh, look, there's the logo. There's that. There's this. There's just, you start noticing other stuff as you're doing the read-throughs, as you're doing follow-up read-throughs. And it's something that has me fascinated and enjoyment of this title.
Can we talk for a little bit about this Curse of the Crimson Corsair?
Oh, God, yeah.
Because this has been going in as the backups. And I don't know how you've been reading this. Like, for me, I've been reading the 2-page storyline as it's been going along. But then I've been going back and reading them on DC's website, because I'm really enjoying reading them, like, back-to-back. And I applaud them for putting them up there that way. Because I think what it's done when you've done that is it takes somebody on, a smaller budget who's saying, all right, I want to read Rorschach, or I want to read Ozymandias or Night Owl. I want to read one of those. Or Minutemen. Maybe I was very into Hollis Mason's whole thing in Watchmen, and I'd love to see more of that character. But I only have the budget for one book or two. It allows those people to be a part of reading those 2 issues in their book, but yet being able to read all of the others and all the other parts. I really applaud them of making, as a company, of making good use of the internet. It's on DC's source blog. And when you click on you go to DC Comics website and you click on blog, you can actually click on Crimson Corsair, and it has the whole thing there, which was something that I really, really enjoyed, the fact that I could go back through. It's by Len Wein and John Higgins. John Higgins was the original colorist, and Len Wein was the original editor on Watchmen. Lettering by Sal Cipriano. And I love a good pirate story. And I was really into this because of the good pirate story. I loved the choice of, the color work on this. The fact that it was more of a black and white, gray tone-ish feel to give it more of a seedy pirate ship kind of feel, like it was a black and white film serial, versus it being a full color today's Pirates of the Caribbean, if that makes sense. Yeah, I thought the style choices were really, really good on this one.
Yeah, this was one where I started initially reading it, in the backups as they were coming out, and I can't remember which. I had kicked 2 issues around, and it was just when I grabbed the one issue, I didn't grab. So I was reading. I read 2 parts out of sequence. I was like, oh, okay, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out, okay, what I got to read next. And then you told, because I didn't know about that they were putting it online. And then once you told me about that, I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of done reading it in the issue. I started just going right to the source and started just pulling them up that way. And I got to tell you, I'm not a big, online reader with the digital comics. I do enjoy the physical paper in my hand, but this has been a really cool way to read it and go through the different pages and just, when a new issue comes out, I go to the source, I look it up. Sometimes I'll start from the very beginning. Sometimes I'll just read the one issue. This is, again, something I've done multiple read-throughs on it, and I'm kind of going out of my normal comfort zone where I don't have my format, this is A, B, C, how I do it. I'm kind of keeping it a little bit free-forming, and because of that, it's been a different experience for me than it has been for the Watchmen. And it's not different bad. It's different, just a different, growth and understanding of the character and visions where the story's going. This is something that I hope, I would like to see them put all the stories together in paper, just because I do like having that. But I do have the stories, boom, 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 one after another online, and that's working for me. Which it's kind of hard. It's kind of weird for me to say that the digital is completely working for me and it's accepted, and I'm like, yeah, this is neat. This is good.
You read some webcomics, though, don't you? Because I know you've read stuff like you've read Love and Capes when it was a webcomic. They'll still post. Tom Zoller still posts webcomics of Love and Capes, but we're both ones. We've been collecting that in the paper as it's been coming out now, and we like that in the paper. But like things, I don't know if you've read things like Battle Pug, or for example, Guns of Shadow Valley. Those are things. They're web content. It was created that way. I know like Battle Pug, for example, just had a collected edition released of the first year. They've been releasing them that way, and actually you can get that digitally on an app too, as well as getting a paper version of that from Dark Horse, which I think is super cool. But this is kind of like that. I like that. I like the 2-page delivery in the comic. I'm into that because I'm still reading it that way. But when I do my read through again of it, like every so often after a few issues have been released, I'll want to go back through and read the whole thing just to see, this whole idea that he's cursed, this George McClellan or McLaughlin. Is it McLaughlin?
Yeah, McLaughlin.
Okay, Gordon. I'm sorry, Gordon McLaughlin. Gordon McLaughlin. Because his name doesn't actually last into it very long, because he just gets pulled into this whole, for the sake of honor, I sacrificed my soul. He stood up in that moment because he saw an injustice of what they were doing to this guy by flushing him underwater repeatedly. Then all of a sudden he's turned on. Because of that, he's forced to his death. And because he's put into that whole situation, he has to spend the rest of his eternity because of, mutiny?
Yeah.
Because of mutiny. Which really all he was doing when he was committing his mutiny was really trying to do something honorable for a fellow human being. And this pulls him into this horrible bit where now he's got to spend his whole life trying to then, or, I guess you would call it a life, trying to gain back a way out of that and a way to freedom from that.
Yeah, it's the curse of the Flying Dutchman. It's that whole, what happens to the sailors who die at sea, and just that whole mythos behind it. And it's another neat little spin adding on to it and feeding off of it. And I kind of, again, it was something I was like, wait, I know a little bit about the Flying Dutchman. I know a little bit about what they're talking about. So it's, again, another neat little adaptation, another neat little take on the story that has me wondering, especially when they start bringing in, with the Voodoo Lady and, with the recent stuff that are coming out with us. These are stuff where I'm like, okay, what's this now? Hold on. Let me go back and reread through some of this stuff. And it's something that has me looking forward to the next issue of this, much less I'm looking forward to the continuation of the Before Watchmen stories, but I also want to read these. I want to see where this goes. And I can't imagine this is going to end well for this guy.
Or what cost is he going to pay for it to end, quote unquote, well? Because of the dark, horrible places he's going to. Like, if he could survive this, could he ever really come back from the world? I mean, come back to the world from that? How do you go back to a life from this?
This is something that scars your soul, even if he gets his soul back.
Well, that box, I think, is going to... Yeah, that box is going to scar his soul.
Right. Even if he's somehow able to figure it out, even if he's somehow able to do the impossible, which it pretty much is impossible to do, when he gets it back, what's he going to get back? Because it's not going to be the same thing it was. He can't be the same thing he was. And that's something that the Black Freighter story that was in the original Watchmen kind of went down that road, went down that line. So I don't want to say it's the same type of story because it is a completely different story, but it does have that same type of vibe, that same type of feeling to it, which is something you need in the Watchmen universe. It is about not just the story that's in front of you, but the reaction and the results that are going to happen from the story. What is this guy going to be like when everything is said and done? Yeah, there'll be an ending to the story, but there always will be the consequences after the ending. We saw, it's Watchmen when Adrian's plan went through, and we saw how everyone had to deal with it and react to it, how they're going future forward, what are they going to do with it, what's the world going to be like. It's the same kind of story within this little mini story inside the title. He's got this problem. He's got this adventure he's going through. When everything is said and done, that's not going to be the end of it. There will be still more going on to this guy, even though we won't actually get to see the pages.
Yeah, and I kind of like that. I like that this is kind of a horror story, if that makes sense. It's a pirate-based horror story. There's a definite creepy factor to it. I love the whole voodoo themes. Live and Let Die is one of my short list of Bond movies, and I always loved how that headed into that like whole voodoo style theme as well. And you mix that in with pirates, and you've got a winner. Yeah. In my eyes, that tends to really work for me as well. But I love that there's forces working along the way that do not want him to gain back his soul, that do not want him to succeed.
Yeah, we got pirates and zombies and voodoo. Oh, my.
Pirates and zombies and voodoo. Oh, and voodoo. Hey, voodoo. I messed that up, but it actually sounded like a Hanna-Barbera character instead, so I guess we'll let it go. Pirates and zombies and voodoo. Oh, my. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's actually, it's one of the cool things about this story is it's just got a little bit of everything. I've always been a pirate fan. I love pirate stuff, and it really fit in this one. So did you let me ask you a question about this, because there was mixture of commentary from people like bloggers who were posting after the announcement. Len Wein, because of the fact that he's doing some of this epilogue material for it, had to, when they switched to the second story arc of the Crimson Corsair, he's no longer the co-writer. John Higgins is doing the writing himself on it. Does that kind of stuff bother you when like a co-writer just winds up taking over by themselves?
No.
Was it something you even noticed?
Not really. It just, for me, it was just the story continued on. And it's the fact that there wasn't a dramatic change in what was going on, how the character was reacting. Yeah, his surroundings were different as the story progressed, but how that character reacted to what he was dealing with was all the same. That never changed. If I get, if there is that consistency in who the character is, I'm okay with any changes or any creative teams. It's kind of, when there's a creative team on a title, if it's a title I'm really enjoying, and the new creative team comes in, and yeah, there's going to be differences, whether it's a physical appearance or story being told. But if I still get that same feeling that character that I deeply and I was passionate behind and that I was for is still that same character, I'm cool with it. With this story, this was the same character from beginning to end for me. I didn't see any change in who he was at his core.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the keys about this one was you've got the co-writers who are working so closely together that, it's obviously the communication between these two was very, very strong. And obviously both of them were associated with the original Watchmen anyway, that when these two are working together on a project like this, they obviously had strong communication. They have a strong sense of direction on where this story's going, and it just feels tone-wise. And I think it's a testament to both versus a sign of weakness that they were able to say, hey, you know what? John's got this one. We've, worked together. We know where this story's going. We know the direction we want to go with this character. He's going to take care of nailing this one out of the park. And I don't know. It's really good. I do find that I'm enjoying reading this much more online afterwards. Like, I'm enjoying reading the 2 pages. I read them every single time when the issues come out. I haven't stopped doing that, and I'm enjoying that experience. But I do find that, like you, I get more out of it when I read it in larger chunks. Because of the amount of time, it's usually a week between each 2 pages. I'm getting more out of it. Unless I don't stockpile these books because I'm so into them. Like, before Watchmen, another issue comes out and I'm reading it. So it's not one of those that gets stockpiled enough that I would be reading 2 and 3 of them at a time, unless I'm doing a reread on that particular series. And then the pages don't match up.
Right.
So, I don't know. Pretty good overall. I've always been a fan of co-features or backup stories or whatever you want to call them. I'm a fan of that extra storytelling. It just gives you a little something satisfying at the end.
Yeah, it's a little bit extra, a little bit, little bing there. And I don't know, it fits the Watchmen universe. It fits, the fact that we needed something. I think we needed something like this in there. Again, it's a kind of a connection and a tie back to what was from Watchmen with the Black Freighter story.
Agreed.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Jim, our next chat is going to be of Batgirl number 12. The writer on this book is Gail Simone. The penciler, and I am so going to butcher this, I'm just going to spell it. It's ARDIANSYAF on pencils. VICENTECIFUENTES on inks, ULISES ARREOLA on colors, and Dave Sharp letters, Brian Smith editor, cover by Stanley Archerm Lau, Batman created by Bob Kane. Apologies for having to spell names, but I just knew I was going to tear them apart because there was no way I was going to do them justice, so... And I want to applaud the art team on this book. I love Batgirl. One of the things I really loved about this series, this is something I think we as fans have wanted all along. What's going to happen when Batwoman and Batgirl finally meet?
Yeah.
But what I like is it waited so long. I'm glad they waited. Give this some time to germinate. Don't throw Batgirl into, this type of crossover until you've had about a year under her belt. And the timing is right. She's a more confident Batgirl now than she was at the start of all this because we were seeing her still dealing with the ramifications of finally being back on her feet. Now you've got her in this place where she's a little more confident, but yet she's human and vulnerable too, and I love that about her. And she's now confronted with this Batwoman who in her own way is very intimidating and larger than life. And Batgirl's, the whole feeling out process, the battle, everything about this issue, and the supporting cast. There's a lot of story in this issue, and I just was salivating from page to page on this one.
Yeah, this was, again, one of those beautiful meshings of written story and physical pages that just, I was sitting there going, yes, yes, yes. I'm high-fiving myself, cheering, hooping, and hollering, and just marveling at not only the story being told, but what I was seeing. And I was kind of chuckling when you spelled out all the names, but it is a pure respect that we both have on these creative teams, that we don't want to insult and or, butcher anybody's names just because this is, again, some fabulous artwork that we are getting to enjoy, but it's fabulous artwork along with a wonderful story being told. And I loved how, I was so glad you mentioned how we needed this time to build the characters.
Yeah.
Both Batwoman and Batgirl need to get their sense of their feelings, their sense of their footing. And this Batwoman that we're reading is the same, has that same feel I'm getting from her book. This could have been a Batwoman story with guest star Batgirl. The characters were just, it was in tune with who they were. And that was something that, again, I love when you get a crossover character that feels like they feel in their real title. This isn't this is her take on Batwoman. No, this is Batwoman. This is how Batwoman is in her title. If you read this and you're not reading Batwoman and you like the character, guess what? Pick up Batwoman, because this was a great introduction to the character if you haven't been reading her, because she is a really cool character. She has her own little nuances and dynamics behind her that Barbara also has. And I thought that was one of the things that really shined in this. It's the nature of what is a hero. Who is a hero? How does the hero act? How should the hero act? And that's been something that we've seen since the beginning of the Batgirl title, that it's not only Barbara dealing with her accident, dealing with the fact that she's walking again, dealing with the fact that she's a hero again. It is the dealing with the fact that what is a hero? What makes her a hero? Is it because she's in the costume, or is it her actions that define her as a hero? Same type of story going on in Batwoman, same type of feeling as to who is Batwoman. I love that. I completely ate it up, and it was just something I was like, yay!
One of the things I really love about Gail Simone's writing of characters is whether she's telling the narrative from the perspective of the hero, the villain, a supporting cast member. When she gets that internal dialogue, there's a lot of personality to the character that goes into that dialogue. Like the whole sequence where, she's reflecting on Nightfall and then reflecting on Detective McKenna and the fact that Detective McKenna hates her guts, but the only one who knows what's going on. But then before she can continue that thought, she has the uh-oh moment. There's the uh-oh. I really like that stuff because that's part of who Barbara is. Barbara's one of those characters that she's been through so much. Yet, through Barbara, you can find hope. Whether she's in the wheelchair, out of the wheelchair. She's one of those characters that Barbara is not invincible. Barbara has weaknesses. Barbara has strengths. Barbara has conviction. Barbara also has self-doubt at times. Barbara is a full package, like any human is. There's something inspiring about the fact that with everything this woman's been through, whether you keep her in the wheelchair as Oracle, you put her in the costume as Batgirl, if you remember that this girl's been through traumatic things with the Joker, with the fact that she was shot and paralyzed and in a wheelchair, and the fact that she's back now, she has emotional scars that go along with that. And there are things that she has continued to work through this entire series. She's gotten stronger from them. She's gotten stronger as a hero. She noticed that those times that she froze, the weaknesses that came from it, were things she needs to continue to work past. And I really respect that is not something that was handled in an issue. Where issue 2 was her dealing with getting shot issue, and now we're done with that with Batgirl. Because that to me would have been so weak. No, instead, what we've seen is a gradual growth in how she learns how to deal with that. But these events, pivotal events in her life, have become part of her. As pivotal as the events where she started to have a respect for Batman and became Batgirl. I want to see is the Zero issue. How is that going to play out? What was it like when she became Batgirl in this world? Because I want to see those events that made her who she is. That's something why do I love this writer? Why is this person my favorite writer? It's because things that sometimes are taken as a tiny detail that you deal with in one issue, she understands that no, this is a part of the makeup of the character. And real people don't react that way. These things don't just get brushed under the carpet because, hey, we high-fived at the end of this. I ended up beating the bad guy when I froze last time, so now that means I no longer have a fear of guns. That doesn't happen in her writing. This is something that still comes back. She still has that jerk instinct, and I like that. She's grown. Yes. Mm-hmm. She's moved forward. Yes. There's been positive progression with her, but these are still demons that are going to haunt her to a lesser level. Yes. But they're there. And she's learned coping mechanisms to deal with it. And maybe the fact of what happened in the original arc of the series has helped drive her to work past that. There's something I connect with that more because we all have demons. We all have those things in our life from our childhood or whatever, our own failures, our own weaknesses, bad choices we've made, things that have been done to us. Any of those things, if we were bullied as a child, those are things that hold into us. You got little things that, like, I shouldn't say they're tiny pieces, but these big events that have happened in our life, they all add up together to make little pieces into a puzzle that makes us. And, hopefully our larger experiences in life start to overtake those little pieces and they become more prevalent. And I think that's what's happening with Barbara. Her successes, her victories, her ability to keep going on. She doesn't always win, which is something I like. Sometimes, at the end, she survives and a potential victim survives, but the villain gets away or, something wasn't clean about what happened. There's somebody got hurt or something like that. And she's got to sit there and say, I've got to do better next time. This isn't acceptable. She's self-critical of it. And there's something about that I really find fascinating. Like, what drives her to keep putting on the suit? What drives her to keep doing these things? What is the conviction that keeps her going? When other people, lesser people, normal people would have hung it up. You know what I mean? And I'm incredibly engaged by this character because this is what Oracle was all about. And I think that's really an important key. I got to admit, when they made the announcement, before I knew that Gail Simone was going to be writing it, when I found out they were going to be taking Oracle out of the chair, I was like sitting here, I'm like, ooh, I'm a Batgirl fan. I grew up with the 60s Batman show. Batgirl was like, if anything, as a kid growing up, if there was my first crush, it was Batgirl. Yvonne Craig. I got to meet her when they had that Screaming Tiki Con here. The Adam West was there and Yvonne Craig was there. One of the sweetest, exactly what you would expect her to be because she was Batgirl. One of the sweetest people in the world. And she was like that to every fan that was there. Just really, really pleasant and nice. But that was like as a kid, easily my first crush was Yvonne Craig. Because, she was incredibly beautiful. And it was Batgirl. She was awesome in that series. So, that's a character I had a huge attachment to. Killing Joke was one of those stories that it had such a resonance for me when it came out because at the time, character death and character status quo change sure was something that happened, but you never expected it to happen to Batgirl. You didn't expect Batgirl to get shot and paralyzed and for it to stick for as long as it did. That was something where, wow, kind of like the Barry Allen death thing.
Yeah.
That's that Alan Moore story where it led into, and Alan Moore didn't put her in the wheelchair, didn't make her Oracle. He just had her shot. That was something that was done afterwards. I shouldn't say just had her shot. That was a pivotal moment. When, the psychological nature of that whole storyline with what happened with Batman and Joker and Jim Gordon saying you got to prove that we, our way's the right way and all that. That whole stuff was great. But that's neither here nor there. What happened with Oracle afterwards and how that just kind of took on a life of its own was amazing. So there's that part of me that was like, wow, I really got into Oracle. What's it going to be like? This is where this writer works. She knows at the core who Barbara Gordon is. She's a fan of Barbara Gordon. She gets Barbara Gordon. And she gets who this character is that we as fans want to know her. This woman is just as vulnerable and just as human. And I find like when I'm going on like a mission with her in these stories, I feel like, wow, maybe on some level I could be her sidekick, and that somehow that would work because I wouldn't feel too bad about myself when I so horribly screwed it up because I know I would, because, she would have, first of all, she'd have to train me because, sure, I exercise and stuff, but like there's no way I'm throwing combat moves like she is. I'm the one that like really is, I'm going to be captured all the time and she's going to have to rescue me. mean, that's just kind of the reality of the whole thing. But I love that somehow I know that it's going to be okay. Like, she's going to still let me be on Team Batgirl for some reason, because I don't see her being the one to, like, you know, burst my ego. I love that about the character. I think it is because of her. I think she's accessible. Like Bruce, I've grown up being a Bruce fan. But one of the things that as Bruce has evolved over the years, Bruce is not the guy you can talk to. Like, after a mission, I would feel comfortable talking to Batgirl about where I screwed up and went wrong. She would give me constructive criticism, and we'd probably work on some team-up moves. You know, and some team-up way of handling it where she'd actually make me feel like my being there could potentially be a benefit to her. Maybe. Either that or she'd, like, be too afraid that, like, she was going to, like, forever fall into guilt when I'm ultimately killed. You know, so there might be that end of it as well. Like, she wouldn't let me do this anymore because of that. But there's something where, like, I connect with it as a fan. The truth of the matter is I enjoy my comics more when I feel like I'm going along for the ride. When I feel like the character is somebody who I can relate to. I could see myself sitting at a Denny's having a conversation with this person like at 3 a.m. after we just fought crime. That's the kind of stuff as a fan I get into. Can I picture those type of moments? Is this person accessible? Bruce, you're not going to do that with. Bruce, first of all, isn't going to eat. He's going to grunt and groan. The cool part is I'm going to eat a lot better if I'm hanging out with Bruce, because Alfred brings down some great stuff for him. But Barbara's the one that I'm going to have a conversation with. So I'm probably going to hang with Barbara, because if people don't realize it, I like to talk.
I'm sitting here just waiting for you to take a breath. I'm like, dude, you're going on a couple minutes here of straight just talking. How are you breathing?
I love Batgirl. Have I said this again? I love Batgirl. It is one of the things. We haven't talked about this book half as much as I've wanted to. And it was one of those things when we were talking this week about doing Before Watchmen. I said to you, dude, I'd really like to find a way to talk Batgirl, because we've talked a lot in the crossovers and things about, we talked about Batman in Night of Owls and all that stuff. We did talk about Batgirl there, but we didn't get a chance to really talk like heavy in depth about this series and how much I'm digging it. And I'm really going through like Gail Simone withdrawal, because we haven't really had a chance to really talk about the work that is Gail Simone and what she does writing-wise, and just the fabulous art teams that she gets put together with. I mean, you know, that's how I feel. How do you feel? Sorry. And I'm sorry. I know I was rambling on there, but it's really, this has been something I've been holding back for some time. And I know you're in the same boat. How are you feeling about this book?
Dude, man, you're cracking me up.
Wait. Here's. This is actually funny. People will appreciate this, because I know where you're going with this. You got to remember, I edit the show, so I've got to go back and listen to all this, right? So everything you're cracking up at right now, I'm going to be laughing at when I hear it back, because I've got to hear myself back, and there's nothing worse when you're a podcaster to hearing yourself back. Like your stuff, like I hear it with like a fresh pair of ears. And I hear parts where I'm being like an idiot when it comes to something you've said, you know, or I'm like being unnecessarily critical or something like that. But then I also hear rants like this where I'm like, boy, you know, when did I breathe there? And did I forget that Jim was there? I often do, you know.
It's Batgirl and fanboy.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, wait. 110%. I am a Batgirl fanboy.
Well, while I completely agree with what you're saying, because, you know, and it's funny because I'm laughing, but as you're talking, I'm nodding my head and I'm sitting there saying, oh, yeah, testify. Yeah, because I was completely in agreement with you on what we're getting from, you know, what just the coolness that is Batgirl, the coolness that is this story, you know, written word, physical, you know, appearance, everything that is just firing on all cylinders. One of the things that I have always loved is the intense comedy. Now, by intense comedy, I'm not talking about, you know, constant, you know, slapstick, haha, laughing and joking. I'm talking within intense moments, you get these elements of comedy. And I always love seeing that. And it's got to be done just right. If you put too much comedy element in there, it takes away from the intensity of the scene. Not enough, and it's just an afterthought and it's forgotten. I laughed at the whole Rorschach thing with the serious smack when we were talking Rorschach. Same type of stuff going on in Batgirl. I always get those moments. And especially when the first moments of the combat between Batwoman and Batgirl, when Barbara's sitting there and assessing her, and she's like, yeah, she's tough, badass tough, but I've never heard anything about her being too well trained. I can take her. And as soon as the fight starts, she's like, note to self, remember to update combat appraisal of Batwoman ASAP. And it's big, bold in the lettering, just so you really know she's saying, oh crud, way off on the assessment there.
Wait, no. Oh crud? She said, holy God. Yeah. She actually, wait, it wasn't a thing she's saying, oh, no, she actually said, holy God.
But right there, great moment of this really cool, intense fighting going on, but there is that comedy moments. And even when Batwoman's got her on a rope, she says uncle. And like, wait, who says uncle? And person who's got a bloody nose right now. It was just little funny bits of dialogue between the two of them that didn't take away anything of the intensity, didn't take away anything from the action, had me laughing and enjoying these characters. This is intense comedy. It's the perfect level of comedy, right mixed in right with that intense moment of action, suspense, adventure, whatever adjective is going on there. You have to have that little dab, that little splash of the comedy. She did it in Secret Six all the time with Ragdoll.
Dude,
one of the reasons I love that character was because of the one-liners, the perfectly placed one-liners that he threw in.
Dude, I want to do a Leaving Megalopolis special. When that book comes out, I want to do it.
Okay.
Because, it's a Secret Six twist. It's this creative team for Secret Six, but we're going to have to do that. Just because, on this show, I think one of the things that we like to do here is talk about what we love about comics and what's great comics. And I can't talk about great comics. I think in this last year, we haven't done as much as we normally have with how great the work is of Gail Simone and just how much we really enjoy it. Obviously, there's different tone once I start talking about her work. I get diarrhea in the mouth, which is a good thing. But it is that pacing and that sense of when is the right time to use the right emotions. When is it okay to bring in that humor as a way to deal with a potentially stressful situation where I could freeze up. That note to self moment is Barbara's way of, in her mind, keeping herself in the game. Not getting deterred, not letting the darkness creep in, where she could say, instead of saying, the little joke about note to self, remember to update combat appraisal of Batwoman ASAP, that kept her from saying, good God, I can't beat her. She's overpowering me.
Yeah.
Man, did that hurt, which is what's really going on in that moment. That is her mind saying, I need to focus elsewhere. People use humor for that. And in that common situation, I chuckle, I laugh, and all that. I'm like, oh, is that brilliant? Because I don't know what I would hope I would do that in that moment. I like to laugh. I like to chuckle. I would like to think I would do that. I think she would have to tell me afterwards, no, when you were clutching yourself on the floor, that's when you tell a joke. That would be at Denny's again. I think we'd have one visit to Denny's, and then she'd tell me what a horrible sidekick I am. I think that's what really would happen. Because I probably wouldn't be able to joke in the situation, and I'd be a liability.
Oh, definitely, dude. And I say that knowing that I wouldn't be any better. Mm-hmm. I think we both would get the talk. She's like, I think, not everybody can wear the cape and cowl. Everybody can be a hero in their own way. And your way to be a hero is be that great teacher that I know you are. And that's how you can be a hero. You don't need to put on the costume. Because I completely see her doing that kind of conversation. And she'd do the same talk with me. So while I'm, saying it to you, I know it'd come to me. And to be honest, I that's part of the reason why I don't know if I ever would put on the cowl, because I don't know if I have the right mindset.
I would. If I could go to Eaton Park with Batgirl, I'm there.
Now, that I would do. But
I'd take a knee to the stomach.
To it.
I'd take a knee to the stomach to go to Eaton Park with Batgirl. I would. Now, I've got to, being honest, there's certain things to happen to people that have been supporting cast in this book that I would not do. Like, I'm not losing part of a limb for Batgirl or anybody.
Yeah.
You know, that's
that's a tough one. That guy, and especially he lost it in a bear trap, which, you know.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's where I got to draw the line. Some of the people around Batgirl wind up with collateral damage. So I don't know.
Again, being a member of the Bat family is not a safe occupation.
No.
Look at all of Tim's friends. You know, look at Nightwing. You know, some of his friends and from the circus and whatnot. His family. You know, Barbara, her friends and family. It's a dangerous thing to be associated with the Bat family.
I like the post fight, the whole handkerchief thing.
Yeah,
you know, where she's in her head saying, you know, in that moment she says, "Uncle," you know, trying to get to the point, like saying, "We need to talk this out. Okay, let me find out whose side everyone's on." You know, are we on the wrong side? Is she on the wrong side? You know, who right here should be teamed up, who shouldn't? Let me find out the real situation, because this fight is not going to end well.
Yeah.
Which was a good choice. But I love that inner dialogue. I'm not going to mention that I'm trying my best not to barf. And that would be the proud factor. If you're in a costume and you're sitting there with somebody who's wearing a similar like motif to you, this is Batwoman and you're Batgirl. You do not want to look like the lesser mortal out of the two of you.
Yeah.
You want to look like you're just as in control of the situation as she is. You're just as relevant as she is. You've got to be just as together because you're wearing that symbol. And that is one of the, you know, I've got to be honest with you. I think if they really existed, you know, the Bat family, and I had a chance to put on that symbol and really get in, I think you could sit there and say, I think maybe with that on, I'd feel a sense of like pride, you know, to not like screw it up for that one time.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it the way that they do, though. That's one of the things I respect about Barbara is the fact that she keeps pushing on when others would not. You know, and in these moments when, like, she jumps back into Batgirl mode and your intel isn't entirely wrong, Batwoman, but it's incomplete. And they're sharing resources in that moment. That's who Barbara is. She's an information gatherer. She's gathering resources. She's realizing what Batwoman knows, what Batwoman doesn't. And realizing she's going to know things that Barbara doesn't know, and Barbara's going to know things that she doesn't know. And maybe if we put our intel together, we can complete the puzzle at least enough that we can do something. That concussive insurance behind her back, I loved, because she never hits this point where she doesn't know yet. Like, can I trust Batwoman? Is Batwoman on the side of the angels? Or because she's with the DEO, is she going to get into a situation where my case that I'm working in right now, she's going to try to fold, and I need to keep Detective McKenna with me because she knows the information that I need about Nightfall to put an end to all this. That is the kind of thing. You got a lot of respect for Batwoman in this. And that's one of the things I like what you said earlier. You said Batwoman didn't lose anything being in this. Batwoman was handled the way that she would be handled in her own book. I totally agree with that. The one thing I love that between the end of this, who won? One could argue when you got somebody with a concussive batarang behind their back, it was a stalemate. And I'd love to see round 2.
Yeah. And I loved that sequence where, you know, if you look a couple panels before that, before Barbara mentions that she has it, you can see it behind her back. You can see it right there a couple panels ahead of time. And that was something I didn't catch the first time when I was going through this. You know, the first couple read-throughs, you know, it wasn't really until my art read-through that I saw her holding the concussion batarang before it was actually mentioned in the words. And I thought that, for me, again, was a great artistic moment.
I hope
the fact that the art has it in there.
Yeah, I hope that's understood, that panel.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I really loved during all this was when we hit that Jim Gordon sequence, and he starts to find out the truth about what happened with James Jr. During, you know, he was breaking out. You know, we got to see that wonderful storyline from Scott Snyder, where he brought back James Jr. in that. Of course, it makes sense that if we're going to, you know, revamp the New 52. Where's a cool place to play around with James Jr.? With his sister.
Yeah.
Put him in there and have him be a foil. Now, does he know?
I'm assuming yes. I'm assuming James Jr. knows all of the Bat family secrets, because we saw he kind of figured it out in before the revamping. And he's got no reason to tell anybody the secret. It's one of those, why would he throw it out there? That's, the knowledge is his power. That's his own, his own little neuroses, if you will. He's not going to start sharing with all the villains that, Bruce Wayne's Batman, Dick Grayson's Nightwing, Barbara Gordon is Batgirl. He's going to keep that information to himself because who he is and what he's about. But I 100% think that he knows everything.
I don't know that I necessarily agree that he knows everything. I do think it's on the table that he knows about his sister. I think that's there, and I would agree with you on that end. I don't know that necessarily leads the New 52, at least, to him knowing who the rest are. Right. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong. I just don't know that the evidence is there to suggest that. Just in that sequence, though, when he's sitting there, and she goes, she came. Yes, told you she would. And with what he's been doing with the roommate and stuff like that. Now, it could be argued that he was doing what he was doing with the roommate to mess with Barbara.
Right.
Not knowing that she was Batgirl. And that he's messing with Batgirl just because he has his own little agendas for Gotham and what he's doing. So they could be independent of each other just because of the nature of who he is. But there's another part of me that 100% agrees with you that it's because he knows. And I love that it's it's implied, but it's a mystery still as well.
Yes.
Because it's not spelled out. So it leaves you to speculate right now and just kind of ride along and want to know because he's acting as this counsel. But acting as a counsel in a moment is not because he is like kind of the sidekick person of this, the informant. He's the puppet master. We haven't really seen what James Jr. is capable of yet. We are going to see down the road. I don't care when. I actually kind of like that we're seeing this Nightfall in the forefront and, her little gang in the forefront and seeing that battle. But, James Jr. is just in this little bit cameo. Nice build. I like a good build to a villain. You don't need to reveal too much about him here. You need to tease. Get us excited. He's wicked. I remember Savant from Birds of Prey when he was first introduced in that arc where he broke and broke Black Canary for all extension purposes. Just how creepy that creep factor was, and there was an anticipation built with that villain as time went on, having no idea where that guy was going to eventually go. But this is happening with James Jr. And this is the kind of creep factor that I really like that drew me into her work in Birds of Prey very early on in her run there, was this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I just really like how she's handling James Jr. in this because I'm just like salivating for this guy. I want to see more because I've loved what's been done with him in DC in general in recent years. And we just really scratched the surface of what this little deviant can do.
Oh, big time. And I love the fact that they did have their connection in Arkham, and just knowing James Jr., just the way he is, I can't imagine. In my head, he was being nice to her. He was keeping her alive. He was helping her, just planting the seeds from the very beginning, even before they got out. He was, manipulating her, twisting her psyche, just the way he wanted it to go. His entire I can't imagine more that he sat there while in Arkham imagining he was going to do this stuff. And that's why, one of the reasons why I'm thinking some of the information from the pre-revamp is still applicable today. And that's why I'm thinking James knows about the whole Bat family, because while he's sitting in Arkham, he's planning his revenge. He's planning what he's going to do next. He's planning the next, the next 10 moves of his chess pieces.
Why does that mean that he knows identities? Why does that mean that he knows identities?
I'm just thinking that if we have this level of villainy in him, the previous stories, must have occurred. It wasn't just one simple story that got him in Arkham.
No. But
there's a complex thing. And a good part of that story is the fact that he knew that Dick Grayson was the new Batman. He knew that when Bruce came back that it was no longer Dick Grayson, that it was Bruce back in the cowl. There was all those little bits and pieces that let us know that James knew this stuff. And I'm just thinking, if we have the same level of villainy now that we did back then, he probably knows what he knew back then.
See, I don't know that I agree with that. I think you could still have the same amount of villainry with him, like you're mentioning, the villainry. I think you can still have that with him without him knowing the identities. Because you could still have him because basically you're saying that he's doing what he's doing because he wants revenge. And couldn't it be just revenge against Batman without knowing the identities?
Yeah, definitely could be. And if that was the case, I wouldn't feel cheated or upset over it. It's just, in my head, this is how I see it going down. I could be completely wrong. You could be completely right. We both could be wrong, and it could be option C that we're not seeing.
But dude,
who knows where this is going to go? But we're going to get, eventually we'll get the layout, we'll get the full-on play, and we'll find out exactly what he knows when they want us to know. And I love that's the layout.
I'm going to poke a little hole in this right now. If it's because he knows that Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne are Batman, he's wanting revenge on them, why is he here? Why is he going after Barbara? I think this has more to do with Mom, Jim Gordon, and Barbara than it has to do with Bruce and Dick.
The other thing that, well, one, he does have his issues with his sister. He does have issues with his mom, and he does have issues with Gordon. So
I don't think Mom being back's a red herring in this.
What?
I don't think Mom being back's a red herring in this.
Oh, no. There's definitely, he has his issues, and he does want the vengeance and the payback. But part of payback to Dick Grayson, part of the payback to Bruce is if he hurts other members of the Bat family. The fact that he's dealing with Barbara, the fact that he's dealing with his sister will add to the knife, will add to the sting for both of those two. Now, is that his sole motivation? Of course not. His primary motivation is his sister, his father, and his mother, or his mother's wife. I'm not sure that she's biologically his mom. But that is his primary motivation in this. But I think part of it is there is a vengeance, there is a payback, there is a little bit against Bruce and Dick Grayson.
Well, no, there's a, all you've determined is that there is a payback that he wants against Batman and Nightwing. Because if he's going after members of the Bat family, there's nothing to indicate that he's going after, like, Alfred, for example. That would imply knowing an identity. Going after anyone in Gordon's family does not imply that he knows the secret identities of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. I'm agreeing with you that there's that vengeance, but then vengeance for him is almost too simple. He's got all kinds of twisted issues. So, I mean, it's not even vengeance that is driving this guy, and that's where I will take one step back and say I do agree with you that he's twisted enough that if he does know the identities, he's one of those guys that would keep it for a lot of the reasons you're saying. So I will step back and say your point is not lost on me, that this is something that James would do because he's just that kind of creepy freak. I get that. It's why we want to see him get beat up. No, it's really, really, when you've got a really good villain, what happens is it gets to the point where they're so twisted and so evil. James is evil. And I think there's a certain point to having evil villains in the sense that it makes you root for the hero. Even the human, Barbara Gordon's a human hero. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about her. Whether she was Oracle, whether she was Batgirl, there's a humanity to her you can connect with. And any, sense of joking that I may have been doing on this, where I was joking about being her sidekick and all that stuff, I don't want to diminish the respect I have for the development of the character and her humanity. Because I think that's something that's at its core. When we're comic fans, one of the areas where heroes get inspiring is when you have that villain that you really believe might just be so evil and so dangerous that you're going to question, can the hero actually beat them, or does the hero just hope to survive them? This is the kind of villain that's being crafted here in James. And you want Barbara to find a way to win. It's because he is so creepy. He is so dangerous. We want her to have that hoorah victory at whatever cost. Whatever it takes for her to get there. And then you wonder how she's going to continue on afterwards. Because whatever's going to psychologically, not even just physical, whatever psychologically she's going to go through to get to that point, it's going to be huge. And that's something that when you craft a villain like this, who could be a guy, if he does know identities, that you're right, if he, being fair to you, he's the kind of creep that you could buy into, that if he did know the identities, he would keep them secret, just like he would his sister. See, I'm pretty convinced right now that he might know who she is. There is that part of me that could see it being painted the other way very easily, but there is that other part of me that's like, he knows it, and I could see that it's more fun for him to set Nightfall after her than to reveal that it is in fact my sister, because I don't know that that's information that would be safe for him to reveal as well. Like, I don't know that if I was doing what James Jr. is doing, although I'm not going to think, I hope I would never in a million years be able to really think like James Jr. is, but I don't know that I would be sitting there going, and by the way, that's my sister. That doesn't, just that statement in and of itself doesn't sound like it's going to go well for a bad guy if they did know, right?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because whether he knows or he doesn't know, I'm cool either way, just because it's the level, everything you said about him being sinister, him being evil, this is the long play, this is just the introduction, this is the teaser to him, and we've already had a couple teasers already, but this is just a little bit more play to it, a little bit more growth, let you know a little bit more about just the level of evil that he has going on. So when we do get the definitive yes, no, whenever we get it, if we ever get it, then it'll just be the icing to the cake. It'll just be that final piece to the puzzle. It'll just be that capstone to what has already been a great villain. It's that whole question, does the Joker actually know who Bruce Wayne is? Does the Joker know the truth? And is he just too crazy to either realize it or too crazy to do it or not care? It's that same type of level. I have that same type of feeling with James Jr. compared to Batgirl as I do with Joker to Batman. It's that same personal level of evil and affront to what the hero stands for. And it's kind of neat the fact that it's Barbara's own brother that has that level of evil and that level of just, that villainry, to our hero.
Now, one thing I really liked in how this was handled, the combat sequence where she goes in that gauntlet against Nightfall's gang.
Yeah.
I like that we were learning McKenna's intel as we were seeing the combat situation go on with Barbara. Like, that was a great opportunity because, you've got a limited number of pages in a comic, and you want to give us both of those things. So how do you do it in an efficient way where we get a lot of content, we talked about at the beginning of talking about this issue. There's a lot of story in here. And I love that. As a fan, I'm like, wow, there's a ton of depth being delivered in here. I'm getting to know these little supporting characters, Nightfall's gang and what makes them tick. And I love seeing a hero run a gauntlet where it's a deadly gauntlet. She knows that unless she uses all of this intel to her advantage, she's done. That's the whole point of this. They brought her into this trap to take her down. She knew it was a trap. We find that out later. I think we all as fans knew that was coming, that there's no way she was going to this alone and didn't know that they were going to do the double cross. But I love that. But they made a mistake. They put themselves between me and Nightfall. That was just a great moment.
Oh, my God. And these were, again, art moments that were just absolutely wonderful. Non-traditional panels, those little bit here, little bit here, little bit here, overall, right on top of an overall larger picture. It was just some great just moments. And one of the panels that I always keep going back to and I keep pausing at is when James Jr. and Nightfall were finishing up their conversation, and you're going to slowly see her putting her mask on. Yeah. And you kind of have half the face. You can see, you got this blonde hair, blue-eyed, very pretty woman, and just as the mask is coming on, all you just see is those bright blue eyes. And normally you look at the blue eyes, you're like, oh, okay, nice, pretty, sweet girl. But with just that sequence with the mask there, you can see the evil. You can see just the darkness that's there. And that was something that always just really caught me. And then you go from that moment to bam, 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 rapid fire action sequence to the arrival of the cavalry with, and it was just like yeah. You just keep riding that roller coaster of energy and excitement. And that was something I was just like, dang, this is neat.
One of my favorite panels was that one where Catharsis is smashing into the ground, like face first. Let me explain. I love that because you see this sequence where, the actions of Barbara. But what I loved is the pose of Barbara in the background there. I love, with the fingers kind of pointed back a little bit. It's landing in that like kind of squat. One of the reasons why I like that, I'm a big fan of with your acrobatic superheroes, your Batmans, your Spider-Mans, Nightwing, Batgirl, where they've got this kind of poetry to their motion. When they have this like landing where it's clear that they let their legs cave a little under them to like help break the shock of the fall and things like that. But it also, that's where the cape opens up. You can see it in the background, and there's like a confidence there, if that makes sense. It's like a almost like a martial arts kind of flow, if that makes sense to it. Like those poses where it's like, this is somebody who's had training. They know how to land. And, these are people that don't fly. And they just got to look, it just looks cool. As a kid, I always loved those poses where we'd see like, the athletic flips from Batman, the kicks, the punches. I was a big fan of the Batman Family Giant specials, and that's where, you talked about on the show many times how as a kid you didn't want to read comics with like a female lead because you like the stigma of it or that type of thing. I think one of the reasons why I was opened up to that is as a kid growing up, they had these big specials. They were oversized Batman Family issues. And inside there, was obviously Bruce and his supporting cast that was drawing me in. You'd have these great stories with Batgirl in there. And you started sitting there saying, wait, she's really kind of a cool character. So it was that character, Barbara, that really opened me up to saying, wow, female characters are super cool. I read a Supergirl solo series, for a while when she had the headband, looking like, that Let's Get Physical video with Olivia Newton-John, because it was that era in the 80s, where everybody had the headband. I'm talking about. Supergirl had that look back then. I read issues of that Supergirl run, quite a bit, and I really enjoyed that. I always liked female characters because of that. That was kind of like a different character. It was a different vibe than you get from a male character. And, Batgirl's been one of those characters I've always liked because of that. And this series, wow, just those moments, I don't know, that those poses took me back to my childhood. I've always loved the spreading of the cape, and you don't want to overdo it. You want it to be in landing moments like that, and it's certainly when you're smashing, winged a winged predator into the ground like that, you gotta look cool. You don't just slap them into the ground with panache. and then our panel did that.
Dude, it's not just about looking cool. It's not just about the landing. Look in the background in the shadow. The wrestler, the beast, the tank is coming at her. She's getting ready for the next sequence where you see her doing the kick. She's landed. She's recognizing next threat coming in. She's in position to strike.
And that strike looks cool. That strike looks super cool.
Oh, yeah. This was all part of the flow, part of the fight sequence. It's about stick and move. She knew once I hit the ground, I got next one coming, so she's already down in combat position. She's landing in fighting mode. She's landing in a defensive position because she knows the attack's coming, so she's got to do the initial strike. She can't sit back. It's kind of like when she initially fought Batwoman, she wasn't, exactly, she was more on the defensive right from the beginning. Here, she's got to go on the offensive. She's got to take the initial strike to her. She can't let her get her hands on her. It's got to keep doing the stick and move. So land, fight. I loved seeing that. And that was something I noticed in like the second in my art read through, because I saw the shadowy figure of her coming at her. And you can see, boom, boom, panel layout for, 1, 2, 3, bam, 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 right in the row. It's the combat sequencing has always been just a beautiful layout here.
It's not Batwoman's fight. And she's risking everything to throw her hand in with us. Everything. Maybe I do know what a hero looks like after all. And she wears red and black. One of the things I've always loved about the Barbara Gordon character is the times, like, whether at this era in her life or, the more mature Oracle era of her life, there's a certain element of her that's humble, that's willing to analyze and look at people for their strengths. And you see heroes through her eyes, and somehow they're raised up because it's Barbara Gordon giving them the nod. And that moment where she does that, I was like, wow, that's really cool that she analyzes and looks at these people and says, hey, wow, look how cool she is jumping in with us. Not is she trying to steal my thunder? This isn't Booster Gold. This is Barbara Gordon. Barbara Gordon's all about, what am I trying to accomplish here? And look what this person's doing to help. Look how effective we're being because she is here. What would have happened if she wasn't here? She's in there saying, hey, this is great. It's good to have her here. This is making this whole thing work. It's a very Barbara Gordon moment. And then she shows up to see Ricky. Hey, Ricky.
Oh, Ricky, you're so fine. Ricky, you're so fine. Well, my mind. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Ricky.
Here's your foot. Wow.
Oh. Yeah, and he's sitting there. He sees the light at the end of the tunnel. He sees his angel coming to save her, and she kind of gets stabbed in the back. And I loved just how that played out. Just that last panel, you get the squelch as the knife's going in, but then you get the little blood splatter at the bottom of the page. You have that white border outline. It's got the blood splatter there. I thought that was a nice, really cool touch. Again, just the non-traditional art layouts.
I like when the kid was saying, you came for me, you came.
Yeah.
That's something that he never could imagine. I mean, he looks very sickly because of obviously everything that's happened to him. I don't know how long Ricky is for the world in the condition that he's in. But, when Batgirl stabbed in that moment, I loved that, he was trying to save her, trying to warn her, saying that, wow, this poor kid. I mean, someone's going to pay for what happened to this poor kid. Think about their original meeting and what this kid was all, about back then and what happened. I just love how that, her whole attitudes changed because of the injustice. Nobody should go through what this kid's going through.
Yeah.
And that was something that I just really enjoyed about all this. What a you talk about a cliffhanger. I mean, we got to wait 2 months to find out what's going to happen with this.
I know. I am looking forward to the Zero issue.
Oh, I definitely am.
Like, dang it, come on. I want to know what's going on.
They're teasing us.
I know, man.
What a terrific, terrific book. Let me ask you a question. After a year in this, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this one, because I don't know that I really have an answer to it. Do you prefer as Oracle or as Batgirl? Are you even in that place?
I've been thinking that lately, because I so loved Oracle. I so loved what she went through, to stay as the hero. And it's that true heroes never quit. Well, we're still seeing that true heroes never quit, but with her as Batgirl, with her recovered from the wheelchair and still, fighting and rising up, and just, it is the nature of what a hero is. We're seeing that in her. So I'm still getting those cool moments. I think for me right now, I want her to stay as Batgirl for a while. Because this is my Batgirl right here. I never really read her as Batgirl before. I've only read Barbara as, Oracle. Before this, my Batgirl was Spoiler. That was the only Batgirl I ever really read before. Barbara before this stuff. So the fact that I have Barbara as Batgirl, I'm really liking that. And I was one of those guys who didn't want to see the end of Oracle, and now I'm like, I don't want to see the end of Batgirl. I want to keep her in the costume for a little while. Maybe eventually down the line have her go back to being Oracle, and something happens, and she's back in the chair. And if she is, then maybe we'll see the birth of Oracle in this universe and how she would play it out that way. But for right now, I'm very happy with Batgirl. I'm happy with where this is going and how the character is handling herself, and just I want to see more of this. I want to see her as the hero.
Yeah, it's kind of the point where I've distinguished and separated the two characters. At their core, it's Barbara Gordon. And I honestly like the fact that we could see elements of the Oracle side of her in the way this, in the librarian side, or all that kind of stuff that, has been a part of who Batgirl's past is. I'm actually really curious to see the origin, to see what that looks like in more of a modern telling. Because I know that, obviously that Gail Simone loves this character. She's going to do something that's true to the heart of who Batgirl is. But then she's also going to tell us, like she did with Wonder Woman, tell us something we didn't know about Batgirl and her origin. Take us someplace we didn't realize. And that's what I'm cool with seeing as well. I like when origins do that. Like some of these Zero issues, I'm really looking forward to really seeing the things that I never knew that they're now finally revealing in these origins when they're, telling the new story with them. What new twist and turn because of this crazy world has happened for these characters. And I'm curious to see that. Yeah, the whole... I don't know. I'm torn over that in the sense that I loved Oracle, I loved Birds of Prey, loved everything associated with that. But, I've had a year now of Batgirl. I would be very disappointed if, she went back into the wheelchair now. First of all, I don't know why it would be necessary. I do understand the point when somebody says, well, but Oracle was, as a character, a symbol and of showing what somebody in a chair could do. And I agree 110% with all of those arguments as to what was cool about Oracle. And those stories are still there. And they're still relevant. And they still should be honored. It's just in this world, because of the way it diverged, we've got a girl who just happened to come back out of that now. And we have a chance to tell different kinds of stories with this girl. On what I'm with you. I'm liking the idea of having a chance to see Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. And like you said, if there's ever a reason to, you could always make her Oracle again. Or, kind of develop a new character into that role. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. 12 issues in, this series is incredibly satisfying. I'm really, really digging this. The same way that I've loved things like Birds, the Secret Six. It's been interesting when you start off something the way you're mentioning, where you're like, I don't know how I feel about her being Batgirl again. And a year later you can say, this is pretty cool. That's the end result that you're hoping for after a year of it. And I think that's hard to do. I think that's really hard to give your readers that sense when you're taking a character like this with two distinct different mindsets out there. Like you mentioned, it's do I feel that it should be Oracle or do I feel it should be Batgirl? At the end of the day, Oracle's an identity, Batgirl's an identity. If the writer gets Barbara Gordon right and who she is at the core, I think we as fans are all going to find a way to connect with her. And I think she did that. This is a very modern version of who Batgirl's always been. This is what Yvonne Craig was to me as a kid. And I love that. I mean, that connection to me is just awesome. I've been watching episodes of that 60s show lately, just kind of getting nostalgic for all that. And she was like the girl that you looked up to back then. And I just think it's really cool that Barbara Gordon still feels that way. She still has that vulnerability. She still has that humanity. The Bat universe needs that. It needs that accessible person. It's different than Nightwing, because Nightwing's an accessible guy too, but Barbara's a different sort of person when it comes to that. A little bit more comforting, a little bit more caring in just a different way. I don't know. It just really all works for me. It's a great, great series.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
It's funny, Jim. We weren't going to do it. Then we both agreed, how could we not talk about Justice League number 12 on any level? So we're going to kind of talk casually about this book. First of all, I want to talk about just Justice League in general and this run. Because it's funny, a lot of times when I throw out my top lists, maybe I forget to throw it in. I don't know. This is a book I guarantee you I would not drop in a million years. This is definitely one of the top tier books. I think one of the reasons why I don't mention it is because I do think this may be the flagship book mentally for me of the universe. I think I would have, like this and Earth 2. Putting these books together, they're my flagship team books. And this is what Justice League should feel like. These are the must-read characters. Earth 2 feels like that for its world. Like that, this is the crossover I want to see. I want to see this team crossed over with Earth 2 eventually. That's the Justice League JSA team-up I want to see. These teams, because these are the heavy hitters.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, these are the big guns. And one of the things that I loved about this is the fact that we're getting the imperfect matchup. We're getting the world has this opinion of the Justice League, and it's not reality. Behind the scenes, they're not this gelled team that everybody thinks they are. And the fact that they're recognizing this, and they're saying, hey, we need to become what everyone thinks we are. And it's that beginning, the formation of the trust, the beginning of the formation of this super team that we all want to see out there. We want the heroes to get along. We want the heroes to be friends and hang out outside of the costumes and just be buddy pals. And I love the fact that we're seeing that growth of that team. We're seeing that build of that friendship and that level of trust. And so you get great superhero stories, but you get these great human stories from this series as well.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent way to put it. They're not the veterans that, like, when we've seen them put together, like under Morrison's run, for example, which I really loved. I loved JLA with Morrison. And he put, the heavy hitters of the DCU together. They were all veterans. Except then you'd have like a couple of new guys, like, for instance, Wally West and Kyle, comparatively. They were pretty established at that point as well, but they were relatively the newbies. Now you're dealing with the fact that these are guys, yes, they are more of the top tier. Now, they are the top tier, I should say, of the DCU. But as far as teaming up together, they are not veterans. And like any team, like any set of egos, they're all very powerful. They all bring something unique and a unique skill set to the table. With that skill set, with those egos, comes a weakness that's brought with those egos. Sometimes I think I know better than you backfires horribly because you need to know them better than you think you do in order for a real team to get together. It's not how well you know yourself, and it's not about pushing your opinions in everyone's face. Sometimes it's about listening and learning. And when you've got these kind of egos on the team, not always going to happen. And that's something I've really liked about this series. They're not a bad team. They're a very good team. Arguably, they're easily the best team in the DC universe. But they're not the perfect team they've always been portrayed as. That's what I really like. They are the flagship team. These feel like the heavy hitters. My favorite teams growing up, though, have been the ones like a lot of times I reference the Claremont Uncanny X-Men run. That was not a clean team. They argued, they fought, they disagreed. Cyclops and Wolverine in particular, those two were butting heads all the time. Not just over Jean Grey, over philosophical differences. Cyclops was more the straight and narrow, where Wolverine was, the hard-edged, let's get in there and bust some heads. Cyclops wanted strategy, Wolverine wanted, shish kebabs. And, I mean, that was the kind of attitude that was going on there. What I love about this is everything that's great about these heroes are being brought together, and everything that sometimes gets in their way, their own weaknesses that they face in their own books, are being showcased here. Jeff Johns is a writer that when he takes all of these characters, nobody's left out in the cold. He's managed to spotlight everybody in this series and how they relate with each other. Who likes who respects who butts heads with who, because they might be a little too much alike. And that's something I like, too. Sometimes the people that butt the heads the most are butting heads because they sometimes have, the same thing on the brain.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And again, it's a realistic approach to a team dynamics. And it's always funny to say realistic when you're dealing with comic book characters because it's just the supernatural, sheer, impossible nature that is a comic book story. But when you get these realistic moments, when you get this, true humanistic type of character that is laid out there, even if it is a Kryptonian or an Amazon or a guy with a green ring that is able to generate items just with pure willpower, there's still that human side to it. There's still that realistic side that when you're reading, you say, yeah, I could see a person reacting that way. I could see the fact that they need to have a scapegoat, and he would be the right guy to, and Hal would be the right guy to step up and say, okay, I'm the scapegoat, put this one on me, so that way I protect all of you. It fits his personality, and it fits the need for the team. I love the fact that it did have a little bit of a dirty ending for them to keep clean.
And even Bruce, who the two of them have butted heads all along. Hal's gone out of his way to needle Bruce. Even Bruce says that he doesn't have to do this.
Yeah.
I loved that moment because that's a great use of antagonizing people and using, as fans and readers of Batman, we know that Bruce has a heart. Sometimes he doesn't know how to show it, but he seems to know when to show it at the right times. Like, when he's comforting Graves, those things weren't really your family, but you already knew that, didn't you, Mr. Graves? Like, he's almost comforting them there in that moment. He's realizing the loss because he's had his own family loss like that. He's connecting with that. Wow. What a cool moment. I also connected with the relationship between Steve Trevor and Diana.
God, yeah.
Anybody who's been in a relationship that's failed, where you've had this talk after your relationship. Sometimes you have more than one talk like this after your relationship. It's two different people with two different ideologies on why their relationship failed. Both of them are right, and both of them are wrong. And that's the way most relationships, when they end, are. There's elements of right on both sides, and there's elements of wrong on both sides. That's because the relationship ended because of the disconnect, I mean, whatever it was that led to that, neither of them understands the other person's perspective as far as why. It's, Diana thinks she's doing everything for the right purpose. She's walking away from Steve because she ultimately feels things that have happened to him are her fault. And he cannot accept that. He wants this relationship, and she got to the point where she can't handle the pain anymore of seeing Steve in this place when she's not.
Yeah.
And it's because of her. And I love that this series focuses on the fact that in her world, she doesn't have experience with the relationships between a man and a woman because of the way her world was. This was something here where she didn't know how to, she's very inexperienced to it. She didn't know how to deal with it. This causes a pain that she's not prepared to learn how to deal with. These builds lead to a Wonder Woman where we can see why would she start looking to a Superman? Because this is a guy who she doesn't have to worry about being in Steve's position.
Yeah, it's the relationship ended not because they stopped caring about each other, but because they cared too much. And when you get those type of moments, when you get those type of breakups, those are always the hardest ones to deal with because you still care about them. But you're like, I care too much about you. I can't be with you because of blank, because you could get killed by one of my supervillains, because of this, because of that. But it's never about, I don't like you. I don't want to see you. I get disgusted when I hear your voice. There was never that negative side to the breakup. It was always a positive, feelings in the breakup, which always leads to the confusion. Especially, it's confusing for someone like us. We normally dealt with these type of issues since we were children. Well, This is Diana, who's never had anything remotely like this. Who's never had any introduction or any way of knowing how to deal with this, thrust right into one of the more complex and painful parts of a relationship. Welcome to a normal relationship. Bam, here's heartache. Bow. And you see her going to the Superman. You see her going to the guy who also has that same complexities, who also has that issues, who has that, I can never truly trust someone. Can I ever really be with a human? Can I ever really be with these people? So they have that common ground. Now, are they both rebounding with each other? And everybody knows what happens when you rebound relationships. That leads to even more problems, or what's going to happen down the line. I loved just the build to this.
Who is Clark relationship-wise rebounding from with Diana, though?
Life.
Okay. I'm not arguing with you. I'm asking you how you're seeing that.
Yeah, he can't have that comfortable relationship. He had that thing with Lana back in Smallville, because they've mentioned that in his titles that he, I think it was Olsen who saw a picture, said, "Whoa, who's this?" And he kind of just quickly pushed through that. So he had some relationship there, and he always had his feelings towards Lois, but that never, materialized yet in this universe. So he has that non-connection with people, and that whole I have to keep this secret from them. I can't share them because if I share my secret with them, I will put them in danger. And it's that same type of connection the two have.
It's on DC's website. They went through and did a top 10 list. It's on the blog of super couples in the New 52. Okay, or potential super couples in the New 52. The top of them was Superman and Wonder Woman. Okay, and it was funny. In one of the replies in there, somebody was saying, "How could you not put Lois as being that?" Meaning, that's super, because they had Green Arrow and Black Canary, who in the New 52 haven't had a relationship. So, yeah. I guess my question would be, what do you think the potential is? I mean, what we've seen here is just the start. This is the prelude. What do you see knowing these two and seeing them for who they are in this and where they've been? You got a Diana who, she was in a relationship where it was constantly about, am I going to be too late to save Steve? Their relationship hit this pattern where they were stuck. And then that clearly is going to have a role on him, because in a relationship with her, do you want her always worrying about saving your life or feeling like you're a true partner? And those are the type of things that get in the way of that relationship. So they're stuck in a period where, like in any relationship, you get to that point saying, can this relationship move forward? Can it succeed right now? Or do we need to go somewhere else? Do we need to try things on our own to spread our wings? And, if we're meant to be, we find our way back together after we've kind of discovered who we are and how we can. But it's funny. He's just saying there's still a way we can be together, all that kind of stuff. In these flashes that she's having, this sequence, this scary sequence in the beginning, I'm referring back to, is you're seeing her being preyed upon. I shouldn't be with you. You let me die, but then there's still a way we can be together. If you give it all up to be with me. Which I guess was where they was going with that, right? Kind of give into oblivion. In the taunting of her. And it was funny how in this issue I focused so much on her relationship because I needed to know who Diana is as a woman in this in order to make a decision for myself on how I feel about her with Superman. Because I want to believe, these two as a couple, do I believe that they're the rebound or that they actually have a chance at something? And it's funny how there's that part of myself that's like wondering right now, wow, could they put this Wonder Woman with Superman and make me believe it? Where are you at? Do they have the potential to be a super couple?
I see pain.
Do you?
I don't want to. I'd love to see those two happy, and then eventually they realize, hey, we're better off friends, and everything's positive and wonderful and sunshiny and lollipops. But I just see pain down the line because you think about it. Clark is not in love with her. He's in love with someone else. And she's the same. She's in the same boat. She's not in love with Clark. They're drawn to each other through common pain. They're drawn to each other through a commonality, a comfort. They know that the other one will be safe, so they don't have to worry about that. They can be open with each other because of this thing. But I don't think it's love. And I think in the end, that's going to cause problems. That's going to cause rips, and that's going to cause, pain, heartache for each of them. And
could it become love? Some relationships start for all kinds of reasons. Friendships develop for all kinds of reasons. There are some of the best relationships start out of a friendship, a mutual understanding, a common ground that you end up reaching. Can you develop love from something like this? See, I guess I'm not convinced the answer is no. Now, this is coming from a Clark and Lois junkie. So I'm not saying I'm throwing Lois Lane out the window. I don't mean it that way. But you're looking at a relationship right now that's going to develop. He's not with Lois right now. And signs aren't pointing to him being with Lois right now, if you follow me.
Yeah.
So I've got to look at this relationship and take it in isolation from that. And in, Superman, if they eventually develop into Lois, I might have a very different opinion. But right now I'm looking at this is the first relationship we're seeing with Superman with a major character. We're seeing an actual potential for a relationship. If it's going to turn into a relationship, I'm guessing it's going to. Do you think this has legs? Is there a potential?
There's definitely a potential. because this would be a cool story to tell, and those two together, and just how they deal with it. But it just, I just don't, I don't see it happening. And it's not even a Lois Clark thing. I think those two are both. I don't think you can, grow to love. I think you have to have that boom, that spark. You have to have that initial fire that's there. And I don't see that initial spark, that initial fire between the two of them, because they're both so inexperienced with, the dynamics of a relationship, especially with Wonder Woman. She really doesn't, understand the complexities of it. So she's, in that learning stage. And Clark, even though he's had relationships, he's had friendships, there is always that distance. So I don't know. I would love to see a nice power couple between the two of them, but I just got this feeling it's not going to happen.
Well, the kiss was pretty powerful. I like the way that was handled. I'm with you, and let me clarify. I'm not sitting here saying I find it interesting, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I'm curious to see if Geoff Johns and crew, if they're trying to and can sell us on that, or if they're going the route you're saying, where this is for comfort and that's all it's going to be. I don't know that it can be that simple, though, because I don't think relationships are that simple. I don't think there is one set of rules for relationships. And, ideally, do I want to see Clark with Lois? Absolutely. But I got to admit, I'm a Diana fan. So if you're going to put Clark with somebody, Diana's not a bad choice.
Oh, yeah.
The two of them are very believable. I mean, like in that moment with the kiss, they look very believable as a couple in that moment. I mean, that's a very powerful visual that was developed there. As far as, I agree with you, it's not like a true love kiss. It's a kiss of respect, there is a love there. There's a respect of friendship. I think there's a respect of understanding. When you've reached a common ground and understanding with someone, you can develop love with them. You can start opening up to them. They're not in that place yet. They start opening up here, and that's what connects them in that kiss. They start sharing things that maybe they can't share. Like he's, saying, I have another identity. My name's Clark Kent. Why do you have an identity like that? And she's telling him the things like, did that work? Your whole keeping the secret to protect everybody. And him sharing his own vulnerabilities there gives her a chance to open up about her vulnerabilities. This is our Amazon warrior who, a lot of times we see her on the battlefield looking so strong. But now we're seeing the vulnerable side, and she's trusting and opening up and sharing that with him. That's where I'm like, wow, there is some potential for a relationship here. Even if, it doesn't become true love, I do think these two as people are going to grow stronger together. I think if anything, if they work out as a power couple, fantastic. If they don't, I think we're going to see why they are so close as members of the Trinity out of this. If you do more situations like this where you see that dialogue between the two of them, which is so essential, we're going to see why they do have such a trust in them that for years we always saw in the comics, but I don't think we've seen defined in such a long time that I want to see that defined again. So wherever it goes love-wise and all that, whether he's, this builds to something between the two of them. And I mean, there's that part of me, that traditionalist in me, that believes, Lois is his true love and all that. And I still believe that way. But I got to tell you right now, they've got me intrigued with this. I want to read this story and see where it goes. And I don't think it flies in the face of what I like about Superman and where ultimately I hope Superman ends up with at the end. But I was a big fan of like Kingdom Come and stuff like that, where he wound up with her.
Oh, yeah. So the characters will work together, especially if you get the correct creative team. And we know there's talent here. So it's one of those things where, okay, let's see what happens. Part of it is just my own bad experience with relationships that I always think, it ain't going to work. But, I could be wrong very easily. And I would love to see a wonderful, positive relationship between the two of them. I think they could tell some really cool stories between the two of them, especially a great way to open up and just a inner dialogue and just a character development, especially on the backdrop of the Justice League. We definitely could have some really, really cool, wonderful stories come out of this. So, yeah, I'm excited about this. I want to see where this goes. And, yeah.
I love the pages with the dialogue between the two because I do think a friendship and being able to talk. I think sometimes a weakness in a couple is when they lose the ability to talk, and I think that happens with a lot of couples. I think that's more often where couples lose their way. When they lose that ability to be able to be vulnerable with each other, to be able to have open dialogue, to be able to share those things that they need to be able to share with each other, I think that's where couples start to lose their way. That's where in relationships I've had, that's where, they've lost their way. It's, sometimes it's been my fault, sometimes it's been the other person's fault, and sometimes it's a combo. But, that's part of life. That happens. And I think it's good to kind of look back and analyze that. And I think moments like this where you see these heroes interacting, I just thought relationship-wise, John's pulled off of some real relationships to nail this sequence. Because I think it was really handled pacing-wise great. I thought the visuals by Jim Lee were terrific. And it led to a moment, I think that kiss, if you just had it in off of 2 panels, would have been a huge mistake. It was really the conversation that needed to happen that led to that powerful moment. Now, Amanda Waller, I'm sorry, go ahead. We're going to go with that.
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Amanda Waller with Graves at the end, I definitely want to see where that goes.
She is awesome. Absolutely awesome. And just, we don't have the same Amanda Waller, physically, but we have that same personality, that same character, that same style, and just I absolutely love that. And would the fact that she's just everybody else would approach this guy completely different, but her, she's like, hey, show me how to take out the Justice League. Call it whatever you want.
Now, the second year of the Justice League, it's not just the Cheetah; it's who she's working with. The whole Atlantis coming to attack, which it's got to make me wonder, is Aquaman going to become a leader in the Justice League from what they were talking about earlier or not? I don't know. But wow, to see him with Atlantis rising up, what would lead to that and why? Billy. I want to see Billy on this team. I want to see Billy in this book. I really want to see that. And who is the traitor in the ranks? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, who have they expanded their ranks to? We know they let Billy in. They're going to let Billy in eventually. Mm-hmm. Who else gets added to the team?
I don't know.
That's the question, because I don't think it's referencing Billy.
No, but I want to see. I want to see who it is.
Yeah.
And who could possibly be the traitor in the team. And then the new Justice League, along with our little hidden gem that keeps popping up when you least expect her. I actually, one thing I love is we've got a year later, and we're still finding out more about her. For as much as been revealed, like in that Free Comic Book Day issue and stuff like that, this is still an enigma in the DCU that's been here since Flashpoint.
Yeah.
And I want to know what her deal is, where this is all going. But what do you think of that new team? Spinning out of this is going to be a spinoff book. What do you think about the lineup in that team?
I'm really kind of excited for this. One, Martian Manhunter looks awesome. I love this costume and just the look and just that presence to him. The new Green Lantern. Okay, we're going to get a title scene. What's going on with him? Of course, the fact that they got Hawkman in there is going to be neat. And I'm digging Trevor and Catwoman. So them on this team completely kind of, especially Catwoman, had me going, huh? But one of the things I noticed with Star Spangle, with Stargirl, mm-hmm. I don't see the Star Staff.
The Star Staff was given to her by Jack Knight in the previous continuity. She didn't start off with that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm guessing when she's introduced, she may have it. I don't know if they're going to go that route or if they're going to introduce her in a different way. So I'm going to be curious to see what they wind up doing with her.
Yeah.
So the Star Staff was something Jack Knight wound up giving to her. It was a decent amount after the end of the Starman series. It might have been when he left the JSA team. He might have given that to her as a gift.
Oh, okay.
But she got that from Jack. That was Jack's staff that you saw. Like so many of the issues of Starman that you see where you see him carrying that longer staff. That was what Stargirl had. That was given to her by Jack Knight. So I don't know how much that Starman series was in the current DC continuity.
I'm guessing this is saying it's not in there.
Well, the Shade, I guess, it goes off of what do we consider the Shade. Is the Shade a miniseries that's in or out of continuity? And if the Shade's in continuity, is Jack Knight in continuity? I don't know. You know what? Here's the funny thing. That's something I would love to know. So I'm patiently waiting, and I'll wait and see how that goes. I'm just glad to see her. I think she's a great character. I was thrilled to see her. We got Vibe as well, which I'm going to be curious to see how Vibe's going to be introduced on this team. I do like the idea that Green Arrow and Hawkman are going to be on the same team because the rivalry between those two is a classic. And I think it'll be good for both characters to be on the team together. I think for fans of both friends and friends/rivals, I think that's something that people are going to really like because those two on the same team, I think it'll get these characters to where I think longtime fans remember them, but also will introduce what was cool about them being on the Justice League together to new fans. I think there's an importance there. It adds a familiarity, while at the same time adding something new for newer readers who never experienced that the first time around. So it's a good choice. I like the lineup a lot. It's the right time for a new Justice League team because that's going to be what, next year? It looks
I think so.
Yeah, 2013 they said. So obviously there's going to be a storyline that's going to build to that, and by then we'll be ready for this. Wonder what that means for Birds for Katana.
Yeah.
She could be on both.
Easily, but I am worried about that because she's a cool character on Birds.
Yeah, but David Finch doing the artwork. I wonder what that means for David Finch on the Batman book, Dark Knight. Because obviously, how are you going to do duties on both?
Yeah, art duties on both is tough.
I'm guessing that's not going to happen. I'm guessing he's going to be on this book now, and that means there's going to be maybe a different artist on Dark Knight. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine an artist taking 2 monthlies. That's a very hard thing to do. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Cool so far. It could be a good year. Let me ask you a question. 1 year later with the New 52, remember last year it was really the anticipation of what this year was going to be like with all of this new stuff. Do you find yourself anticipating the coming year more or less than you did last year? There's no right or wrong there. I think remember the anticipation of last year of finding out everything, about the direction that was going in there. That was a very exciting time last year at this time. I remember going to the midnight at the comic shop in August to get the last issue of Flashpoint and the first issue of Justice League. And I remember just the intensity surrounding that. Do you feel like a similar anticipation to the coming year? Has the New 52 won you over where you're in that place? Has it kind of dwindled to a more normal place for you that it was prior to the New 52? Like, where are you at emotionally about all this, as a fan?
Well, emotionally, I'm emotionally disturbed, but that's just my personal life. When it comes to the comics, there's still a level of excitement, but I think it's more towards very specific titles. There are certain titles that I'm more passionate about, and there's certain other titles that I'm enjoying what's going on. I'm like, this is cool. I want to keep going. But there are titles when I'm just like, oh, come on, I want more. Give me more. I want this weekly. I want this daily. Give me more. So there is an excitement and an energy. Like with Justice League, I am definitely excited, and I want to see where this goes. With Justice League of America, I want to see where the new title comes out. We have the Talon series coming out. I'm really looking forward to that. We just spent a good time talking about Batgirl and really, looking forward to that kind of stuff. There's, the Green books that I'm like, I want to see what the Third Army is. They've been giving us some great tease. Well, we know what the Third Army is, but I want to see how that plays out. I want to see what happens to the Green Lantern Corps, what happened to Hal and Sinestro. There's just, and its individual titles have me going, okay, what about this? What about that? I want to see Aquaman and Black Manta, their final confrontation. I want to see that final battle. I want to know what's going to happen. And the rise of Atlantis. When is that? What is happening there? What do you mean? Aquaman's leading an invasion. Looks like Aquaman's leading an invasion against the Surface, huh? So there's a lot of that anticipation. It's not an overall nervousness, excitement. There is an excitement and anticipation for some stuff.
I like that lineup of Justice League a lot because one of the things it's reminding me is what I am liking about how they're handling the New 52. It's the gradual introduction or reintroduction of characters. It's not, we're not just setting off of the batch that we introduced so far. We're continuing to try new concepts to see what fans are digging and what they're liking. We're not throwing away these characters that we're working on. We're, if one's not selling, let's take this character and move them over here. Let's give a spotlight series of this. Let's do a team book where we can kind of spotlight, now they're bringing back Stargirl and Vibe. And, I'm sure Geoff Johns has a reason for picking those particular characters. I'm curious to see what they are. I don't know. This is what I'm really digging about the New 52 is seeing gradual introductions of characters we have not seen yet. Not all of them in your face right away because I don't want a one-off appearance and then kind of go, well, who was that person? I want, just a lot more of these gradual. Like, the great example would this be, did you read that Phantom Lady and Dollman #1 yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Fans of the Ray, if you like the Ray series, I want to shout this out really, really quick. I'm not going to spoil anything. I loved the Ray. You guys heard us have an episode with Jamal Igle with how good the Ray was, the writing, the art, everything. Great introduction of the freedom fighter, the Ray. Phantom Lady and Dollman, first of all, you don't need to have read the Ray, although if you haven't read the Ray, you need to read the Ray. Phantom Lady and Dollman, totally brand new miniseries, introducing 2 more characters into the New 52 from the Freedom Fighters. They're building a Freedom Fighters team gradually, introducing new readers to them. Reimagining the characters while at the same time keeping what worked at the core with these characters. I cannot recommend Phantom Lady and Dollman enough. It's a 4-issue miniseries. So, as far as like spending like a ton of money for those of you like, I don't know if I'm ready to get into a whole series. You don't have to. It's just a mini. And get in there and enjoy that. If you don't pick it up like right away at your comic shop, remember that like on the app, these things like drop $1 after a month. Consider picking that up because it's just one of those series that like if it's not doesn't sound like your cup of tea, try it for that $1.99 and see if it's a book for you. Because it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. It's everything I liked about the Ray, but its own different, unique tone and style, different art team, different look that matches this book. Just like Jamal Igle did just a terrific job of just hitting it out of the park art wise. But it's Gray and Palmiotti, and I've said many times on the show, and I firmly mean this: Gray and Palmiotti are so underrated as a writing team. They're another writing team where when they touch something, I just really dig it every time. They're a writing team where I pick up their stuff because their name's attached. Even if it's something where concept-wise, I'm like, really? I'm going to pick that up and read it? Well, they're writing it, so I'm going to read it. And every time they deliver. They're just a really terrific writing team, and I can't recommend enough the first issue of Phantom Lady and Dollman. It's really cool. And please, if anybody out there read this and dug it, please shout that out around because miniseries need your help. Because I think a lot of times, people get into some of the big name characters series and their miniseries that are associated with it, but they don't know which of the smaller characters to try. And I think a lot of you are listening out there nodding your head going, yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Gray and Palmiotti. I picked this up too. But you might have friends who read comics or even people you don't know that read comics that are in the same forums or, go to the same websites you do, post in there, that people should check this out because this is one of those series, any of these minis need like a viral campaign going to let people know that they're out there and they're cool. That's part of what this show is. We're a fanzine. We make no bones to pick about it, but I really dig this and I want these characters, the Ray and Phantom Lady and Dollman, to get into a Freedom Fighter series, to be able to read these characters regularly because I think what Gray and Palmiotti is introducing into DCU is something fresh that isn't being covered by any of the other books right now. And that's not a knock on the other books. It's what I like about the New 52. This is another Animal Man kind of thing for me where it's quirky, it's different, it fits in its own little niche that isn't being covered by anything else right now, and I want more. And I want these minis to continue and then lead to finally a Freedom Fighter series. And we need fan support to do that. So if you dug it, let people know. Get the word out. Because let's show DC that these minis with these interesting and unique characters can be just as viable as some of the big name ones. So I just want to give a shout out to that. That's kind of a personal testimonial too. Just a mini that I happen to enjoy. I don't get paid for that. I just really dug it, and I'd like to see more. So I'm asking for anybody who felt the same way I did, or if you were curious and on the fence on it, try it. Please let me know. If you read it and you didn't like it, please let me know. Just say, hey, Sean, I tried your recommendation. It wasn't my cup of tea. I'm curious on that too. But tell me why. Like, what was it that didn't connect with you? Because I'm always curious about that. But, I always appreciate if people try something that I shout out. And I'm always like a follow-up. If you loved it, tell me why, because you might love it for different reasons I do. And if you hated it, tell me why, because you might, obviously you're going to hate it for a reason that's different than I love it, because I love the series. So that's cool. And actually, if you could follow up with me, Jim, on how you felt about it when you read it, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I really dug the mini.
Okay.
Holy caffeine!
Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com at InStockTrades.com. Remember, over at DCBService.com, it's 50% off all new DC trades and hardcovers. Remember, they are a Comixology digital partner. Any digital purchasing that you do, you're going to get 5% of that purchase towards ordering over at DCBService.com. So if you do a lot of digital purchasing, make sure to do it on their site and use that credit to get that trade or hardcover that you've been looking for. Really great that DCBService.com is offering that option. Doesn't cost you anything more and gives you free stuff. Over at InStockTrades.com. Remember, it's month 9 of that end of the world sale. This month's DC Comics, 45% off all DC Comics trades and hardcovers on the site. They also have a massive selection. Once again, it's 65% off. So head on over to InStockTrades.com. This is the time to grab those collected editions at a great price. I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. I also want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. We're going to be heading into Zero Month now, so make sure that if you want to share any of your thoughts about any of the Zero issues that you're reading, that you call into the show, get your thoughts on the podcast. We air every one of the voicemails that we get. Also want to shout out Twitter, Facebook, Google+. I want to shout out our show website. It's RagingBullets.com. I want to thank everyone for following us on the various social media sites and for shouting us out. We do the podcast every week. It's a labor of love. A lot of the things that you guys are doing get us noticed, get us new listeners. Let people know that we're a podcast that's out there covering the things that we do. And we really appreciate the boost in listenership that we get from you guys getting the word out about us. Podcasts don't have an advertising budget. We rely heavily on you guys to get the word out about us, and we really, really appreciate the ongoing support. I love the great conversation. We've got a terrific Facebook group. It's a terrific bunch of people there. I like that it's got a life of its own, and please feel free on any of those sites to shout out anything that you're doing, anything from Kickstarter campaigns to your own comic books to podcasts to blogs, anything that you're doing out there that you want to get the word out about that you think would be relevant to our listenership. Please make sure to shout them out. I'm a big fan of cross-promotion, and I just want to thank everyone for that continued support. Our next episode, Zero Week begins. We're going to be every single week. We are going to keep talking about Zero issues. We're going to talk about every book in the new 52. So this is going to be our goal. What issues are we going to talk about? I don't know. We're going to eventually talk about all of them. We're just going to start chatting until we get through all of them. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep through each episode, and please look at our show notes for the next episode, which books we end up getting to, because Jim and I, our plan is to just start with the first book that we grab and keep going to keep talking about all of the new 52 books, a chance to kind of do a comprehensive look 1 year later where the new 52 is at with all of these cool secrets that they're going to be revealing in these Zero issues. I want to know. I want to know the background of these characters now. I'm really excited to know about some of the new characters they're introducing in the Zero issue, worlds they're introducing. There's going to be a look at Krypton. I want to know more about Krypton. That stuff's kind of cool. So, this is kind of cool things we're going to be looking forward to in the next probably 2 months worth of Raging Bullets, is really doing a comprehensive look at where the titles are at 1 year later. So we will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around such a practical outlook, helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thenengard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. Talking about Hawkman.